my point feature. So now we have it, right? The government of national unity loading, or do we? The ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa said, we will invite political parties, he said this last night, remember, we will invite political parties to form a government of national unity as the best option to move our country forward. The modalities of the government of national unity will take into account the conditions prevailing at this moment in our country's history. That's a point well worth remembering. Now, the responses say so much. Julius Malema of the EFF tweeted, we can't share power with the enemy. The DA's national spokesperson, Werner Horn, first spoke about the fact they'll not engage in talks with the EFF or MK. And the DA's John Steenhuisen saying something slightly different, saying we continue to engage with all parties that are committed to upholding these principles of defending the Constitution, which does, perhaps send a warning out to those they think maybe outside of that. The MK party, they've also said they'll engage the ANC in talks, but they've already said, let's not use words loosely. What does the government of national unity mean? Okay, which means they're not completely sold on it, right? Some, as you know, within the MK still say they still claim they've won the election overall, meaning 50+1, right? And they've also informed the public on their social media platforms that they will not be attending the opening of Parliament until their court challenge issue is resolved. Okay. And then what about the ANC? Well, we know that as the ANC National Executive Committee met up, their supporters made the point, don't dare go into a coalition with the DA. Don't even see the DA as part of the government of national unity. And I'm wondering, how do you do that without a party that's got 20% of the vote? Then, of course, ANC supporters themselves effectively protesting outside the National Executive Committee meeting of the ANC. So ANC protesting effectively against not just the DA, but against a potential ANC ruling in terms of how they will deal with the DA. It's all very, very confusing, isn't it? So now what? Well, here's the point. What we fail to realize is the DA does not have a free pass any longer. And the other parties, well, they also don't have a free pass to, Parliament's golden circle either. It's so much more complicated than that. The voting public has declared that they do not trust any one party to lead our country. That is a fact. The government of national unity is a coming together of parties that are divided ideologically and strategically. They are not united. But the mandate to them is you parties that are not united, find a way to get a seat at the table. Make it happen. That's really what it is. Leadership is doing what's right by putting the people of South Africa at the very center of our decision making. And that's what all parties should be united on. It's not easy, but that's what they need to be doing. That's what's happened in 1994 as well. If the elected parties can't do that, then, well, what do we have? You know what we have? Then we have a government of national disunity loading. I'm Ashraf Garda, and that's my point. Now, what's yours?
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, there you have it. You can comment on my thoughts of a government of national disunity if that happens, and I certainly don't want that to happen, but also comment on some of the other big issues that actually moves the national pulse today, right? To call in, as always, 086 000 2032, and you have the options via WhatsApp, 0614 104 107, text or in voice note form. And if you're listening on the various social media platforms, well, give us a shout out. Good if you do that, okay? Just give us a shout out. Tell us where you are listening from right now. Also, those who are listening via streaming live, and one of them could well be, I think, something that's really important. Athol Williams, you know the name? Remember, he's the whistleblower to flee South Africa by just being that, the whistleblower. Well, he's had a fascinating story. We're going to talk to him about his position in terms of being awarded a fellowship at a leading university in the United Kingdom, right? But first things first, let's talk to Koos van der Merwe. As we know, the theme continues to be about the elections, the fallout from the elections, coalition talk, government of national unity talk. Now, we know that the ANC announced they'll invite other political parties to form a government of national unity. That happened late last night. But what lessons can we draw from South Africa's pre-1994 discussions that led to that government of national unity emerging from our first election? Remember, that one was agreed upon in advance. It wasn't the ANC deciding on their own voluntarily. So let's speak to Dr. Koos van der Merwe, as the former longest-serving member of Parliament at the time of his retirement, I think being part of the NP and the IFP as well. So, Dr. van der Merwe, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Yes, thank you very much. I think saying that what we are getting now is a government of disunity.
Yeah.
You will have half a dozen people there, all want to be the president or the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and there will be continuous fighting. There will not be unity. This is my concern. Now, if we go back to previous negotiations, a good one took place in 1902, after the British had won the Anglo-Boer War. The white Afrikaner people formed a unity. They met every day. There were 55 who were negotiating. Every day they met and they planned for what they're doing tomorrow. At Kodesa, the leader of the former government wasn't even there. F.W. de Klerk wasn't even there to get some unity, to get a plan. There was no plan. It was dozens of Afrikaner people running around trying to do something with no plan for what they no reconciliation, nothing. This is why it went badly. And what we are looking at again is just a lot of people trying to be the government, trying to be the ministers. It's a government of disunity.
Okay, so you concur with my point. It is, we have the potential of a government of national disunity, and as you said, you don't like it. How do we turn that around? Because, all of us have different views about which political parties we like and their visions. But the reality is, as I mentioned even in my intro, that in fact we have to find a way to sit at the table, isn't it?
Yeah, but whether one or two, if two sit at the table, they've got a better chance of success than if you have 20 and 30. Each one want to be the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I just don't see any success in this. They will break away. It's a government of disunity.
Okay, if you don't see success in this, then let's deal with what we have. What we have is we have no single party with a 50-plus majority, number one. What we have is highly unlikely, almost near impossible, that all the other parties outside of the ANC, from the DA going all the way to the smallest party, are able to come together and achieve that 50-plus one majority. That's not likely to happen. What's also not likely to happen is an easy coalition with the DA and the ANC. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. There's huge opposition to that from within the ANC ranks. So if you're saying that we are in the midst of a potential government of disunity, what then is your solution?
My solution is that the ANC and the DA and maybe the IFP, because they need intelligence, they need people like the IFP, of which I am a proud member. Mm-hmm. They need the IFP there with the ANC and the national and the DA. That type of government could work.
But I mean, I hear you, but the reality is, maybe the IFP is almost neutral in all of this. There's a sense that the ANC doesn't want to get tainted by working in a coalition with the DA, and there's a clear sense the DA doesn't want to get tainted by working in a coalition with the ANC. They may well consider a broad-based government of national unity, because that's almost a collaboration as opposed to a coalition. So, I mean,
if they don't go for a smaller one, the big ones, then it's a disunity.
So
This is not Temba. What's your name, Temba?
Ashraf, yes,
It's
yeah.
not going to work. It's not going to work. In the long run, very, very soon, you will see signs of disunity, and eventually it can't work. What we need is just the big parties, 2 or 3 of them, running the country. That's
Okay.
what we need,
All right, I
because
hear
then
you.
your chances of success is much better then.
Okay, I hear you, but I'm repeating what was said last night, that the ANC pushed for a government of national unity, and my guess is that was the option. They followed because they found that the option of a coalition with the DA as a senior partner with them, right, junior partner to their seniority, is going to have such pushback. The ANC can't take that risk.
Yeah, you see, for instance, take the land issue. The ANC wants to get their bill through. It is through now about land. The DA will die before we accept that. And you have other forms of policy where the difference between the parties are such that I just wonder. I'm glad I'm 86. I won't. I won't see this.
Yeah.
I won't see the outcome of this. But
We needed your wisdom. Perhaps maybe just take us through, if you can, before I let you go. You know, when the initial government of national unity, the 1994 one, kicked off and went into office, right? What were your experiences about the differences amongst the different parties? Of course, at that stage, the ANC and the DA and the National Party were the dominant parties. But what? And of course, we also had the deputy two deputy presidents, right, of the country. What were your experiences in terms of your understanding of how they worked and how they didn't work?
They worked well. It worked. They were good people. They were people with sense and people who knew to put the country first. That coalition was a good one. This one with 25 parties and groups, I don't know how many there are, it cannot work.
Okay, but even that one, I think, am I right? After 2 years or so, the Nats left that government of national unity. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. They left, you see, we can talk in circles, but in the end, if you have 10, 12 parties trying to govern a country, you're looking at failure.
Okay, the last thing. Have you heard any voices of, and I use this word advisedly, any voices of sanity that's being echoed around the country at this point in time? A voice of reason or logic with great leadership that says, that's the person, listen to what this person's saying.
Will you allow me to say that the only person is Tlhabisa of the IFP? And the reason why he will make a success is I will help him.
Okay. Well, you've just said it. Let's leave it at that. Dr. Koos van der Merwe, former longest-serving member of the parliament, but still part of the IFP, as he said, 86, and he's going to help his current leader. I suppose he needs it, so we'll see about that. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. We'll certainly get calls and many people wanting to comment on many of the issues, but perhaps your thoughts on what Koos van der Merwe is saying, that he's saying, excuse me, if you want that to stick, you have to include just 3 parties, the ANC, the DA, as well as his party, the IFP. Anything else, too big, too broad, is going to collapse. So that's his opinion. What do you think? And maybe here's a question to ask you. If not the government of national unity, and if not an ANC majority coalition, then what? If not the first two, then what? This is the National Pulse.
So, a lady from Air Officini just turned 55, and although I'm still a spring chicken, there's a part of me that envies her, especially since she now qualifies for a Nedbank Electronic Optimum Plus account with capital guaranteed. Talk about foamy, huh, voice man?
If you mean FOMO, then definitely Bossman. And she can earn up to 12.65% interest. Anyone over 55 can open theirs via the Nedbank Money app. Visit our website for more information. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Bafana, the AFCON 2023 bronze medalist takes on Zimbabwe Tuesday, the 11th of June 2024 at Free State Stadium at 6 p.m. Gates open at 3 p.m. and tickets are available for 50 Rand for adults and 20 Rand for children under 12. Scholars in uniform and students, student card required at Ticket Pro. Come dressed up to support Bafana to win prizes. If you're not in Mangaung, catch the game on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 at 6 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. For more details, visit safa.net and Bafana on X and TikTok.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Looking to the people who are listening, always listens, given Makushe, and tweeting about that on the SAFM, X or Twitter platform. And then, Mahoro Goroza also saying we are together from Hamasia. I hope I've got that right. Also listening in. So great that you're doing just that. Let's get to other issues. Globally, we have a Global Watch feature every single day, and the Global Watch today focuses on Somalia. So Somalia, as you may be aware, has now been elected to serve on the UN Security Council as a non-permanent member for 2 years. There's 5 permanent members. The rest, including South Africa at a certain time, are part of this floating non-permanent members. Somalia had last served on the council in 1971-72. What is the maths done? It's like over 50 years, right? That's during the reign of Siad Barre's regime, right? The new endorsement means Somalia will serve on the UN's most powerful organ of 15 members from January 2025, so in about 6 months' time, to December 2026. So just how significant is this development? Let's get more from Dr. Abdul Karim Algoni, who's a researcher in African affairs. Dr. Algoni, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
For having me.
Dr. Algoni, you're there?
Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I'd lost you for a sec. Okay,
Yeah.
Is this significant?
It is very significant. To me, at least, it's very significant. You see, Somalia for the last 30 years was always in the news on the wrong reasons. Either there is a bomb or someone has died, or it was famine or hunger. But now, since last year, things are moving into a different direction. Now, Somalia is always for the right reasons. Just in December last year, it has been the sanctions that were there for 30 years were aborted, and then debt was relieved, and it joined the East Africa community, and good news are coming from Somalia. So this is really a very significant event to be spoken about.
Help us understand this. How does a country become not a permanent member? That's another whole conversation. But part of this floating 2-year exchange. How does one get into that position?
You see, this thing at least 2/3 of the members of the United Nations must agree for someone to be elected into one of those roving members, non-permanent members. And actually, Somalia was elected unopposed by 179. So this tells you that there is at least 179 countries in the world that have now confidence that Somalia, instead of being always under sanctions for security reasons, now they can be at this international stage that also gives other people information about the security of the different countries and take decisions that are binding. You see, the Security Council is, to me, the only institution of the United Nations that its decisions are binding on countries. So this is really a very high position for Somalia.
What has changed? Because it's not like it's all smooth sailing. So Somalia has got its own problems within the country itself, and then with neighbors Ethiopia too.
Yes, actually, even when we are speaking, as we are speaking now, there are some security issues in the borders of Kenya and Somalia and Ethiopia with Somalia. So they are always there. We just hope that they will just fade away as years pass away. But at least Somalia have gone a long distance to this position now it is in. For this year, for example, for the 6 months of this year, there are very new reported incidents. Even Al-Shabaab itself, which is always creating the news from Somalia, has receded dramatically. You see, for me, Somalia, as we are talking today, is like South Africa today. There are so many parties, none of them has a majority. And although in South Africa it's the political parties' decisions, in Somalia it is a clan decisions. And those clans, the interest of the different heads of those clans changes with time and with interest and with obligations and with what is on the table and what is available. So it's a very difficult situation for Somalia to go this distance. But I hope that this decision, this news from the United Nations will change the way Somalis look at themselves.
So, do you find often, is being part of the UN's on that 2-year leadership position, is that a reward for good governance, or is it, in fact, a sweetener in the hope that it will inspire good governance in a country?
The two. It is a reward. It is a reward for the passage of Somalia from an insecure country to a country that has increasing GDP, has political stability. No, it is a reward for what they have done, but at the same time, it is a sweetener. You see, for me here in South Africa as a Sudanese, 1 of every 5 Somalis is in the diaspora. And I hope that the diaspora Somalis will also take advantage of this and get more involved into the issues of Somalia so that they lead Somalia into a new era that follows this selection in the Security Council. And they will never go back. They will never go back to the insecurity.
What is the level of influence that a country that is in that 2-year stint, what influence does it have on the key decision-making of the United Security Council?
Yes, it has an influence because, you see, the country has to take decisions. Look now what is happening in Israel. You see, what is happening in Israel, if the Security Council wanted to take advantage, as you know, Israel has a very strong hand into many countries. And so people are scared to take decisions against Israel, even within the United States. So being a member of the Security Council, there is a lot of pressures of the non-permanent members to take a decision and to take a stance. There are so many people who hide under the scared of the implications of taking a strong decision. So it is a very good opportunity for Somalia to put itself on the international stage.
Okay, that's where we can leave it. Dr. Abdul Karim Al-Goni, who is a researcher in African affairs. Good chatting to you, and certainly thank you for those insights in terms of the implications of Somalia now, part of the UN Security Council for 2 years starting in January. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 3:30. Here's Madupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines this hour, the EFF says it'll not serve in a government of national unity alongside the DA and the FF+, which it describes as representatives of white colonialism. President Cyril Ramaphosa says those affected by the floods in the Nelson Mandela Bay will be provided with temporary housing. And last year's female winner of the Comrades Marathon, Gerda Steyn, says she's prepared to defend her title on Sunday when over 20,000 runners are expected to set off from Durban to Pietermaritzburg. Details of these and other stories at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 northbound in Bedfordview has a stationary truck on the ramp to the N12 east at Gululi's interchange. The R59 northbound in Alberton is queuing towards Klip River Drive. Queuing traffic reported on multiple routes in that Crown area. Jan Smuts Avenue northbound in Dunkel West has a crash reported near North Road. Cedar Road has delays near Cartwell Corner, and Eskom Patleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has a crash reported before Moot Street. In KZN, the N3 eastbound has a crash before Spaghetti Junction. The N2 southbound, an earlier crash at Spaghetti Junction has been cleared, but traffic is still slow moving. The N3 eastbound in Pinetown has roadworks. The left lane is closed towards Marion Hill Toll Plaza, and that's causing delays. The M7 has roadworks with traffic restrictions towards the Bel Air Road, Wakesley Road Junction. In Cape Town, the M5 northbound slow moving towards that N1 Kuburg interchange. The N1 inbound has a truck lost load reported at that N7 highway interchange. The left lane has been closed off, so no doubt expect some slow moving traffic there. The R300 southbound in Mitchell's Plain is slow moving towards Stock Road exit. Okavango Road and Brackenfell is slow moving at the N1 highway, and Gilberson Drive southbound in Elsies River is slow moving at Voortrekker Road. With your traffic updates, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Doming Kapele.
As always, our Minister of Sport kicks off with, there's a big game tonight, but you want to talk about rugby first, right?
Yes, let's start things off with the changes made in the Bulls side. Bulls director of rugby, Jake White, has made 2 changes to his starting 15 for tomorrow's URC quarterfinal against Benetton in Pretoria. Nizam Kar starts in the number 6 jersey in place of injured Marco van der Staden, while there's another chance, a change in the backline, with Sebastian de Klerk replacing injured Kanan Moody at right wing. Then in football, Bafana Bafana head coach Hugo Bruce says that tonight's crucial 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifier is a new ball game altogether when they face Nigeria in Uyo. In the last match, Bafana played at the venue. They won 2-0 during a 2019 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier under Stuart Baxter, but Bruce says that that's history now.
Games who are done are done. So you can't say yes, but then and then. So tomorrow it's another game, it's a new game. We are confident because since AFCON, I think that everyone in South Africa is starting believing in that team because the results were so good. So we start tomorrow here in the game against Nigeria with a lot of confidence and belief. But again, it's a game of football. And you saw what happened in AFCON. I think we were as good as Nigeria that day. But yeah, penalties did decide the game. It's not possible tomorrow, or maybe. It can be a penalty to decide the game. But you know what I mean, so it will be decided on 90 minutes, and I think we are able to make a good result.
Well, Nigeria yet to secure a win in these qualifiers, having been held to a draw by Lesotho at home and away in Rwanda. Moving on to cricket, Pakistan captain Babar Azam says that his side were guilty of underestimating their opponents. Speaking after their shock defeat to the USA in the T20 World Cup, USA beat Pakistan via a super over, marking the biggest in USA cricket history, the biggest win and one of the tournament's biggest upset. And Azam says that he believes that his side is way better than their performance yesterday.
I am upset. We are not playing good in all 3 departments. We are better than that. In the bowling, we are not in first 6 overs, taking wickets. In the middle overs, your spinner is not taking wickets, then pressure on us. And after 10 overs, we will come back. But I think the way they finish game on the super overs and in the super overs, I think credit to US.
In terms of today, all eyes are on Canada versus Ireland at the famous New York pitch, which no team has gone past 100 at the venue, and that match starts at 4:30 South African time. Then moving on to basketball, Jaylen Brown starred as the Boston Celtics beat the Dallas Mavericks 107-89 in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. The 27-year-old top scored with 22 points, while 5 of his teammates also recorded double figures for the Celtics, who are aiming to win a record 18th title. Ending things off with women in sports with Comrades coming up on Sunday. Today, the spotlight is on Race and Operations Director Anne Ashworth, and I tell you why. Because she came into this position just over 8 months ago and has made a couple of changes with some beneficial to female runners, and I'm just going to highlight the ones that literally stood out for me. Number 1, she managed to bring in an additional 12 million rand of corporate sponsorship in just 7 months to up the prize pulled to 4 million rand. And this year, 25% of the toilet facilities at the start, finish, and at cut-off points and medical stations along the route will be reserved for women only. Not only that, in addition, sanitary products will be available at all 8 of the physiotherapy stations along the route. So kudos to her, and I'm wishing all the female runners all the best at the Comrades Marathon. Actually, I'm wishing everyone.
And you'll be training for next year? Or
not next year, maybe in the next 4 years.
Jump from 5Ks to 90 plus in 1 year.
Maybe in the next 4 years.
Well, make a note. It's on record, on camera. 4 years time.
In the next 4 years, I'll be running the
Make
Comrades.
it 5 years, so that means that's like an election run. So you got like a 5-year term.
Okay, 5 years. So 5 years it is.
2029, comrade. Right.
I'll
Go
have
ahead.
more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Tumin Kapele.
Mama Kitty, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megalitres of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand Water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they have encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand Water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand Water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand Water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand Water beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
The battle between the Super Eagles and Bafana Bafana is an ongoing grudge that will never end. They both believe their style of football is superior. The West clashes with Southern Africa. This is the FIFA World Cup African qualifiers. Catch Africa's great football rivalry. Nigeria versus South Africa. On Friday, 7 June at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Right, we'll be joined by a guest from, as part of the United Nations Volunteer Service. You'd really want to know about that in just a moment or so. In the meantime, let's get to some of the, we're going to get to some of the WhatsApp voice notes as well as soon as I can. But you'd probably do well to remember this now. Losing a loved one is never easy. Having to deal with all the paperwork afterwards is not appealing, especially when you or your family members are grieving. Knowing what to do when the time comes and having access to certain documents can make the process a little bit easier. Our Mutual Life Assurance Company, SA Limited, is a licensed FSP and life insurer.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Right, I did say let's just look at some of the voice notes we've got. You know that question, ANC DA? Here's one.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Fuhani from Tepen. Ashraf, this narrative of DA and NC will not work. That's the one that will not work. Here, your analyst or your professor there is saying that DA will never sign this law that the ANC China pass of land redistribution. But the EFF will sign it. The EMK will sign that into law. We will get the land, our land finally. There will be movement on that one because they've been blocking it. So how is DA and ANC gonna work? Can they explain that? Because it will not work there. That's the one that will not work. Honestly, they must stop pushing this narrative.
No, but you can't say they must stop pushing it. You see, when we get a person who's a former MP and he has that opinion, he's not pushing a narrative, he's giving his opinion. That's it. That's what he thinks. And you are pushing your narrative that says you don't agree with him, and that's fine as well. This notion that, there's a whole lot of people clubbing together to push a certain narrative is just not true. But yes, I think even within the ANC, there are definitely people who are supportive of potentially the ANC and the DA coming together in a collaboration or a coalition. And there are definitely many, many more who are not supportive at all. And then there are others on the outside. I mean, that's the bottom line to all of this, right? I'll look at some other. In fact, here's a comment about names that you'll That's very topical too. Let's get that first.
Hi, Ashraf. I just want to comment on your new name given by Dr. Koos van der Merwe. I think you should go to Home Affairs and ask them to put it on your ID. I love it, man. Ashraf Garda. Sharp.
I tell you what, Temba Dlamini is going to fight with me. He's like, Ashraf, you're just here for 2 months and you stole my name already, you see. Just can't work, okay? But points taken as well. Right, let's move on to other things. We have with us Lucy Indungu with us, the regional manager of the East and Southern Africa region for the United Nations Volunteers. We're talking to her in the context of a UN volunteer drive on the one hand in this country. On the other, you know that South Africa is in the midst of Youth Month and there is a massive need for South African young people to be upskilled. So I think there's a symbiotic combination and you hear a case of Lucy in the right place at the right time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. Tell us more about this. I mean, broad-based, what is it all about and what impact are you looking to have?
You said the first thing that South Africa is actually in the Youth Month in June. And there are two things here. One, we usually engage youth in our volunteering program to try and give them the exposure in the workplace. And two, also to support the building of employability and skilling. So there are two aspects of the youth that we engage within the UNV program. Now, the UNV program doesn't just engage youth. It engages people across the entire spectrum, right from the youth all the way to people who have even retired from gainful employment.
So two opposite sides of the spectrum then. Because
Yes.
I mean, ordinarily it would be young people who are looking for work and looking for opportunities to get a seat at the table, and older
Right.
people who've been there and done that,
Right.
and they suddenly have something that most of us don't have. They've got free time.
Exactly.
And does
exactly.
that combination work?
It does, because from the youngest spectrum, we have the youth who are coming straight from universities, or those ones, again, from another category where we don't require people to have degrees, just high school education, and these are the community volunteers. But the youth usually will benefit from the experience and also from understanding how do different, UN agencies work, how do they contribute towards development. So they not only get the exposure, but they also get the opportunity to, utilize the skills that they have learned during the years they have been in school. And then from the youth, you have the middle level career professionals again, what in our language we call specialists. So again, you're going to find people with a little bit of experience from 3 years to about 8 years serving under this category. And then as you go on, you'll have experts. So the further the spectrum moves, the further the number of years of experience that we get. So say, for instance, even for you, Ashraf, if today you retire from SAFM and you decide...
I'm knocking on the door.
and you decide that you want to volunteer your skills in broadcasting, and, we have such opportunities within the UN, the support, especially in peacekeeping operations, where we have radio that mainly speaks to the communities that are in these jurisdictions where there is conflict. So you absolutely
Well,
are
I could well be knocking on your door. You never really know.
Exactly.
Sometime, not quite now, but it may happen sometime soon. So
Sure.
Your purpose then of being in the country in South Africa right now is what?
Okay, two things. One is to engage with the UN, because the UN system is very big here in South Africa, and to the government also, as we will be doing on Monday. On Monday, we have an event with the government, which is, of course, trying to support this drive of, ensuring that we have more youth registering to volunteer as UN volunteers. And then the third thing also is to hear from South Africans regarding the spirit of volunteerism and where we are. As a nation, of course, I know South Africa, the spirit of volunteerism has been there for ages, but also to learn in 2024 what is new in volunteering. What is it that we can do even as UN Volunteers Program to support these values of volunteerism in supporting the development in South Africa.
And how many volunteers you look to be as part of what, an annual intake?
On Monday.
Yeah. No, well, not as money. What I'm saying, annually, for example, if you look at, say, from this, well, maybe globally and from the Southern Africa region, how many volunteers plug into this UNV system annually?
Last year, for instance, we had over 12,000 volunteers serving globally, right? In East Africa, East and Southern Africa, the region that I cover, we had over 2,300 volunteers that were serving in the different countries within the region. So again, we are seeing an increase in the, more people wanting to volunteer. And we noticed this spike coming up around the COVID time. That is when possibly people would have expected that the volunteering would decline in those times of COVID, but actually it spiked, and we are seeing that growing year in, year out. Even in Southern Africa region, and here we have the field unit, our field presence that covers South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Lesotho, Eswatini. We're noticing an increase in the number of people who are actually registering on our platform to become UN volunteers.
So, what's the appeal then for the people? And I'm looking at younger people in the main as opposed to those that are retired, right? What's the appeal for them when they're listening to you and me talking?
Right.
Like, should I join this thing? And we'll get to the how just now, but what's the appeal for them?
One, the spirit of volunteerism, which is very innate in us. It's not taught, and sometimes even growing in the African context, whether it was the fact that your parents taught you how to share things or how to help an elderly neighbor, this spirit actually is driving people to want to volunteer.
Okay, but why the UN? What I'm saying is people can volunteer with 1,000 different organizations.
Exactly.
Why the UN?
To get exposure. How does UN work? How exactly does UN contribute towards sustainable development? So say, for instance, if someone coming out of school has always wanted to work with the UN or to get that opportunity to, just understand the way UN works, because I know UN people looking at it from outside, sometimes you may not understand the extent of the work that we do. So there is that, the curiosity, and also the opportunity that the UN offers, in the sense that you can work today in South Africa, tomorrow you can work in Namibia, depending on your interest and the skills that you have.
So you've sort of partially answered the question in terms of these volunteers from the Southern Africa region specifically, our target market. They would volunteer and do work in this region, right? So anybody's got this fancy dream of like, I'll be going to New York, that's not going to happen, right?
No, it's going to happen.
Well,
it can happen, because once you register to be a volunteer, you can register either to volunteer nationally. Say, for instance, if you're South African, you can register to become a national volunteer. That means you're volunteering in South Africa. Or you can also register to become an international volunteer. And being an international volunteer, that means that you can be sent anywhere in the globe. Wherever the UN system has a footprint, you can be sent there as long as there is need.
And what does a volunteer typically do?
It depends also on the area of work. Say, for instance, let me just give you one example. We have volunteers who support communications of agencies. Say, for instance, if UNICEF needs someone to come in with skills on communication, editorial work, community outreach, then you can have volunteers who are serving in that area. You can also have other agencies, for instance, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, which really works on issues regarding, drugs and crime, maritime issues, piracy issues, and you can have someone actually supporting the data or even the legal aspects of this work. So it's as wide as the mandate. So it's
pretty wide. And you try and match up skills, right?
Exactly.
I would take it as a given. Okay, lastly, in terms of, so someone's listening and they're hooked, and they are arguing at home, to say, I want to be part of this thing, right?
Yes.
What do they need to do?
One, they need to visit our website. Go to app.unv.org, and you have step-by-step guide how to become a UN volunteer. So once you register and you put your profile on our site, then the next thing is just to browse for opportunities, assignments that are open to volunteer. Okay. And that's it. It's as simple as that.
All right. And is there a specific qualification?
Yes. For different categories, remember at the start I said there are different categories.
Yes.
Different categories have different qualifications requirements in the experience that is required. For youth, you will not need experience. You will need a degree. For others, like expert, for instance, you will need, of course, experience. You will need even a master's degree to be able to volunteer.
Okay, so it's not a mass-based, thousands can just volunteer because they're just interested in it. There are certain criteria they need to meet.
Yes, there are certain criteria for the different categories of volunteers that we have.
And here's the last thing. How often do these volunteer experiences turn into being acquired by the United Nations in one form or the other in terms of a career?
Quite often, actually. Yesterday, I was speaking with the United Nations country team in South Africa, and what I kept hearing from the representatives of agencies is about these volunteers who have done exemplary work with them, and they are retaining them, or they have retained them as staff. So again, the contract gets converted from a volunteer contract to a staff contract.
Okay.
So we are seeing that quite often, and we're encouraging more people, even in the private sector. We're having some volunteers again who volunteer within the UN system, but then after they get staff opportunities even with the private sector.
Okay, you're not going to tell me you were a volunteer once before, right?
I have volunteered informally, not with the UN
Because if you said
system.
from the beginning, I would say that's like the perfect way to end this conversation. Like, there you are. A full
Yes.
circle moment, right? Anyway, much appreciate your time. Thank you
Thank
for
you
joining
very
us. That's
much.
Lucy in Dungu, the regional manager of the East and Southern Africa region for the United Nations Volunteers. Now, I'll tell you what, feel free from your side to just tweet out all the information. Just tag SFM Radio and myself.
Okay.
We'll certainly share that. Just put out as much as you can.
We'll do
right?
that.
And we'll do that.
Thank
Certainly
you very
great
much for
talking
having
to you.
me.
So here's a question to you. Like, do you want to be a volunteer? Maybe, just maybe.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Well, I'll tell you what, lots to talk about there. We'll chat to Athol Williams coming up later on. Looking forward to that conversation, right? And yes, I will certainly take your calls. I know many people wanting to talk and to share their opinions about a range of issues. And I can tell you now, the GNU, the Government of National Unity issue, is like topmost in the mind of just most people, and it's been like that all throughout the last few days, right? Okay, now let's move on to something else. So you may be aware that, about I think sometime in May, in fact, the KZN or Durban Teguini region hosts the annual Tourism Indaba. I've had the privilege of being there on many occasions, broadcasting radio and TV, and it's been fabulous. Okay, well, today we hear from the Teguini municipality mayor, who will tell us more about that city's overall approach with regards to programs to boost the local tourism sector. And what happens in that region certainly connects to what happens around the country as well. This also coincides with the Youth Month as well. But also, before we move on, let me just correct something that happened as well around that time, right? An apology coming from SAFM, the station, because at that stage when we had broadcast, not myself, when SAFM broadcast that's on the Talking Point show, the impression given was the mayor who had spoken to us or was supposed to speak to us was not available because the mayor didn't pitch up. But in fact, what we found out later on, the mayor was not well and therefore unable to hold that planned conversation. So apology for that. That was for that the Talking Point show, right? Okay, let's move on then to the issues at hand now in terms of what are the plans. My guest then is the mayor of eThekwini. That's the mayor, Mqondisi Kaunda. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ashraf, for having us in your program, and your apologies accepted. We are also busy with the recovery processes after the tornadic activity that took place on Monday in the city. Our recovery plans are really gaining momentum. Thank you very much, and we are ready to restore services in the area.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just staying with that recovery plan. I mean, that's something. You're in tourism. You're a city, and you try and do different things, and then you almost can't plan for a tornado, but perhaps you have to plan for it because these things do happen, right?
Yes, we learn on daily basis that we are a coastal city, so we should expect that climate change and how it responds to the non-adherence to the Paris agreements on reducing the emissions in the world. So we are going to suffer.
Good point. I mean, I remember being at the COP17 in Durban at the ICC, and all those issues were first raised, and yeah, it does seem like the world's not really listening, right? Let's talk about your plans in terms of tourism, and how you intend pushing it from KZN or the Durban region or Tegwini out to the rest of the country.
Yes, firstly, today we have launched our Youthman program at Kalipa Special School in Wamashu. We identified the school because it offers skills of the future and life skills. We visited the school before, and we identified a need to assist them at least with the bigger oven for their bakery activities, and we're delivering that today, as well as the assistance in terms of agriculture. Yes, our tourism is now recouping, Ashraf. It's showing the signs that indeed the pre-COVID-19 levels, we are now getting to them. And looking at the tourism awards that we are preparing to reconvene, we introduced them in 2021. And since we started this process, there are many beneficiaries that have really accumulated benefits in terms of the offers that you give, the cash prizes. This time, the cash prizes will be up to 50,000 rand, excelling products, and as well as international study tour worth of 100,000 exceptional achievement products. So the testimonies from the past winners will also be tabled, displayed in this event that we'll be having, and people are urged to ensure that we attend this big event of eThekwini, and the expanded networks that we assist service providers to access through the initiative of these awards is really humbling us as a city that we are responsive to the needs of the sector.
And how do the public respond to, Durban or Tegwini marketing itself as this tourism mecca, right? Both from people from within the KZN region, and then also people from outside KZN, but also outside the country.
Yeah, let's look at the Africa Travel Indaba. So, as the city, there are many economic spins off that we have gained out of this major event. Looking at 9,000 delegates who attended from all over the world, injecting to the city GDP about 439 million rand to eThekwini as well. So we are also expecting immense economic boost to the local tourism sector for the world largest and oldest Ultra Marathon, Combat Marathon this Sunday, as I'll be there at 4:45. To officiate the starting point of eThekwini to Pietermaritzburg, the Sunday, the 9th of June. This is one of the biggest international event. Our hotel occupancy, I'm sure, we are about to reach more than 80-90%. This will have a huge impact on our economy as a city.
Absolutely, yeah.
Also, the publicity exposure. As people will be watching from their television from all the countries in the world. So this will boost the economy.
Absolutely. Well, I certainly would be. I'd certainly be one of them. Let me wrap up now. You've got 30 seconds. So, I mean, the Comrades, you're right, is just a magnificent event. But in 30 seconds, ultimately, all things considered, right, what for you is the single most important unique feature of the eThekwini region?
Yes, you look at the offerings and the attractions in eThekwini, looking at the hospitality industry and many other aspects of tourism. So we are going to be responding to the needs of all the visitors. 45,000 of them will be attending. And looking forward, as a city, we continue our strides to ensure that we continue to attract investments in the city through catalytic projects. And we are working with many partners to ascertain that investments are popping in the city. Our target was to ensure that at least from 2020 to 2026 we attract 200 billion investment. Okay. I think we are getting there.
Well, get there is what you want. First come past the post, last past the post. Either way, with regard to the Comrades Marathon, a comrade is a comrade, and we know the impact that it's had on the tourism in that region and the many other factors. So great chatting to you, the mayor of eThekwini municipality, that's Mxolisi Kaunda. Thank you for your time, and maybe, just maybe, I'll be in that region sooner than you may think. Let's get the news headline. In fact, the news is 4 o'clock, just gone for with Madubi.
Ashraf, the top stories this hour: the EFF won't join forces with the DA and temporary housing for Eastern Cape flood victims. Very good afternoon. The EFF says it will not serve in a government of national unity alongside the DA and FF Plus, which it describes as representatives of white colonialism. The party was reacting to a proposal on the formation of a government of national unity by the ANC last night. The EFF Central Elections Task Force has been meeting in Sandton to review the outcome of last week's elections and to chart a way forward with regards to power sharing with other parties. EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu.
We are not going to form part of any government with the Democratic Alliance. We're not going to sit alongside the Democratic Alliance and Freedom Front Plus in government as the economic freedom fighters. And we are not desperate for positions in government. We're not going to do everything in our power so that we're appointed into cabinet or we become speakers of parliament and all of those things. We're not going to sit alongside the land thieves. We're not going to sit alongside the people who got to benefit unlawfully for a very long time from colonialism and apartheid. We're not going to sit alongside them and constitute government of South Africa.
The EFF says it will be meeting with the ANC in the next few days for further discussions, saying it has also been speaking with the MK party, which is now the third largest party in the country. President Cyril Ramaphosa says those affected by the floods in the Nelson Mandela Bay will be provided with temporary housing. He's visiting the victims of the devastating floods which occurred last weekend in the metro. Speaking at the Laplan Community Hall in Kariega, where the flood victims are housed, Ramaphosa says the government will also help the families through social welfare departments and ensure that burials are conducted. He promised to come back to the area to assess the progress in assisting the victims. Over 3,000 people have been displaced at the Nelson Mandela Bay and the Buffalo City Metro, while 11 lost their lives during the floods. The Post Office says it'll commence making payments to its over 5,000 workers that were retrenched in April. In a statement released by the Post Office Joint Business Rescue Practitioners, the Post Office says it has completed all the necessary administration requirements regarding the payment of the first tranche of severance packages to retrenched employees, including receiving all tax directives from SARS where applicable. This as former post office workers are staging a picket outside the post office headquarters in Pretoria. Former post office worker Victor Majila.
Today, you see us outside. When you must pay the people a money, you don't want to pay the people a money. Must put all the full money. Last month, he put only 12 cents for the workers that in the post office that is in Salab. 12 cents is not enough. We want that one rand for that money. We don't want it 12 cents. There is no difference. And the money of the person of post office is still 100,000 for Sunlab. When that person, he work in the post office for 14 years, 15 years, but this person, he still have the 100,000. So the post office must put the money, the correct money.
And last year's female winner of the Comrades Marathon, Gerda Steyn, says that she's prepared to defend her title on Sunday when over 20,000 runners are expected to set off from Durban to Pietermaritzburg. This year's up run covers a distance of 85.91 kilometers. Steyn won the female category in 2019 and 2023. She says she does not consider the pressure on her as a bad thing.
In terms of pressure, I think definitely there is pressure on me, but it's not anything new to me. I've had this pressure, the same amount of pressure, almost since I started running. You can't perform at your very best without pressure. That is what brings out the best in an athlete, in any distance, in any trade of athletics. So I apply that to myself, and I try to take that pressure and turn it into more of a challenge, rather than just seeing it as a negative or a stress on me.
Meanwhile, Tete Dijana says although his wins in 2022 and 2023 were both down runs, he has his race plan worked out to be the first runner over the finish line for a third consecutive year.
Focusing on my race is that you should always stick to your plans, because we've discussed about the race plan, me and my coach, the way to move, not to move. I'm going to run my own race. I'm not going to expect anyone to run someone's race. Again, I will expect unexpected for me to see if ever I can win up run, because I don't have up run title. So I'm going to try to make a hat trick. If I didn't do it, I didn't do it. But if I did, I did.
The top story this hour, the EFF says it'll not serve in a government of national unity alongside the DA and FF+, which it describes as representatives of white colonialism. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
Coming up in news sports, we hear from the Nigerian camp ahead of the World Cup qualifier against Bafana Bafana tomorrow, and Sri Lanka complained to ICC over different treatment at the World Cup. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. Jan Smuts Avenue northbound in Dunkel West has a crash near North Road. Winnie Mandela Drive northbound in Fourways is slow moving towards the N1 highway, and the N1 southbound in Pretoria has a crash reported before Regal Avenue exit. In KZN, the N3 eastbound has a crash before Spaghetti Junction. The N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, and the N3 westbound has a stationary truck just before Camperdown exit. In Cape Town, the N7 Jakes Harold Drive southbound is slow moving towards Voortrekker Road. The M5 northbound queuing towards the N1 Kuburg interchange. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Okavango Road exit. The N2 outbound has a stationary vehicle just before the M5 highway, and the N12 in Oudtshoorn, that's Maringspoort Pass, is closed due to flooding. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, here's a question. What drives the National Pulse today? What moves the National Pulse? What are the big issues that, in fact, how do you rate South Africa's pulse rate right now? If you just think about it, just where would you put it, right? And more about what our pulse, or the national pulse rate, says about the state of the nation. We'll certainly get an update later on regarding the position of the EFF, as you may have heard, regarding this much talked about state government of national unity. I was going to say state of the nation. In fact, I suppose they do overlap, don't they? Right. Well, we'll talk about that. I will certainly get to your callers as well. I know many people wanted to talk, and I will try and do so as soon as we get some space. It's really important to get your voices out. Absolutely. Let's now, however, talk to Athol Williams. Now, you may remember Athol Williams, probably best known now as the whistleblower. You see, your reputation then precedes you when that sort of thing happens. But not just the whistleblower who testified at the Zondo Commission. He then, fearful for his own position, had to actually flee the country, which is really, really tragic because in many ways he is the type of champion that just typifies the champion people that this country certainly needs, right? But while, he's been abroad and there's other news now. He's now been, he's a former ethics lecturer at the University of Cape Town, you may remember. But he has now been awarded an honorary fellowship by the Hertford College in the United Kingdom. So let's talk to him. Let's celebrate and talk about other issues around whistleblowing and ethics, I suppose. Athol Williams, good chatting to you. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah. So I did say in the intro that, Athol Williams, whistleblower, is a strange way to introduce you, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is. It's also quite non-reflective of who I am and what I've been doing in South Africa.
Well, I agree with you. It is, but and yet that brand now has sort of stuck, right?
Well, I'll always work towards it not sticking. Ashraf, I've worked for many years. I started a youth literacy NGO that's worked with 300,000 children over the last 10, 11 years. I've been a strategy advisor to many of the country's top CEOs. That's what I really do. That's the work I do. The whistleblower was my work I did to advance social justice in our country and deal with corruption. That's not what I am, who I am.
Absolutely. Let me just stay with the whistleblowing for a minute, then we'll move on. So just to refresh people's memories listening in, what did you do as you testified, and then what happened to you next?
Well, I testified before the Zondo Commission for... I prepared an affidavit. The Chief Justice Zondo, in his final report, which was issued in 2022, refers to me by name, thanked and for the value it contributed to the work the Commission did. Literally, the last night of my testimony, I got a call from an international NGO who had had some dealings with, and they work with whistleblowers across Africa. The director of this organization said to me that I should leave South Africa. They strongly recommended they would help me get out of the country because their risk analysis based on my testimony of implicating 39 parties, including the former president, I would be in grave danger. And at the time, it seemed bizarre to me. I seriously didn't think that I'd be in any danger. But so I didn't leave the country with them. I stayed back home, but sort of just was very careful. And it was only when I got a number of other calls from people saying your name is being mentioned in areas you don't want to hear your name mentioned. More and more people telling me I should leave the country. And then when Babita Deokaran was assassinated, sadly, in in August 2021, that's when I realized how serious the situation was. And that's when I then took the option to leave the country on my own.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I mean, since then, do I take it that your position hasn't changed in terms of coming back because the country has changed? There's a sense of relative safety for you. That hasn't changed.
I've written directly to the presidency on 9 separate occasions. On 9 occasions, every time about whistleblowers and what heroes they are and how they're important they are, I'd write to him saying, but could you then offer me and other whistleblowers support and protection? And I never got a single reply to any of those emails.
But that's absolutely bizarre, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and it shows the lack of sincerity, right, about this. 3 different South African ambassadors to the UK and 1 ambassador to Spain, also approached the Ministry of Justice in South Africa and the presidency. And they all came back to me communicating the feedback, right? One was told that, it's complicated. The presidency told the South African ambassador, it's complicated, that's why they can't help me, right? So what's complicated about my situation of having given up my career, my life, my home for the good of our country?
What sort of support would you like to have had?
Well, at the time, it was certainly physical protection because that's what the threat was. acknowledgement. Our country, as a government, has never acknowledged state capture whistleblowers. I've been acknowledged Cape Town with the Medal for Extraordinary Bravery, which is fantastic. I've been acknowledged by Australian organizations, British organizations, but never by the South African government for what, despite the huge cost. And so we're asking for very simple things. I'm not asking for great reward or great financial compensation. We've been saying protection and then make us whole for the losses we've suffered because of our service to our country.
So what are you doing in the UK right now?
I was fortunate in that I could leave the country when I needed to because I was halfway through a PhD at Oxford University. So I came on my own. I then finished the PhD and then started lecturing at Oxford University, where I still currently am a lecturer.
Okay, and you're lecturing in ethics, right? Yeah?
In ethics and strategy. So my two areas of expertise is business strategy and ethics. Yeah.
Okay. And then talk to me about the honorary fellowship that you've just received and how important is that to you?
Well, Oxford consists of 38 colleges, and Hartford College is one of those colleges. I mean, Hartford College was founded in 1274, so it has this long history. And for colleges, the highest recognition they can give to an individual is what they term an honorary fellowship, which basically fellowship of the college, but it's presidents, like the former president of Ireland, Mary Robinson, is an honorary fellow at Hartford, or really eminent persons. And so the fact that Hartford College has acknowledged me for my academic work and primarily, I think, my public service to South Africa is phenomenal for me, Ashraf. I've been seen. It says all this work I've been doing over many years is being acknowledged, and it'll keep motivating me to keep doing what I've been doing, which is about working with executives to try and work towards an ethical society, teaching students. I get to work with phenomenal students here at Oxford, but my intention was to work with phenomenal students in South Africa,
of course.
And that UCT pushed me out. No other South African university or business school would employ me. And so this is what I've had to deal with. So I'm getting on with my life in that I'm now working at Oxford, which is a phenomenal institution. But this is only because I've had to compensate for the fact that my home country has consistently shown me that I'm not welcome.
It's just one of the most bizarre, ridiculous things, considering South Africa's current position and the need to rethink exactly the way we lead, both at national as well as business and all sectors of South African society. Ethel, obviously it's always great to be acknowledged, and that acknowledgement in terms of the fellowship is not just a small fellowship. We know that. That's brilliant. How do you intend leveraging of that? One of the things is we're talking to you right now. It sounds almost trivial, but it's not. It again puts you in the spotlight, isn't it?
No, it's exactly that, Ashraf. And I think that's what's been powerful for me for part of my recovery first. My whistleblower ordeal had a massive impact on my mental health, on my sort of feeling of self-worth, almost my dignity. And so I think being seen and being acknowledged has been a big part of my recovery. But secondly, for me, being an honorary fellow at Oxford and being a lecturer at Oxford gives me a platform from which I can continue to talk about the need for ethical behavior in our societies, ethical behavior in business. And that I will continue doing. I will continue pointing out unethical behavior in South Africa. I will continue acting with hope for our country, because I think it's when we as people stand up and speak up, that's what will take us forward to have the South Africa we want. So that won't stop at all. And I think now with this new platform, where it gives me access, phenomenal access, I will do that even more and even louder.
I'll be looking forward to it, because, you may know that I'm certainly committed to building a champion nation, and that's premised on, growing and building the champion people in our country, and you're certainly one of them, right? Just the last thing, and we've got about a minute. From a distance, you obviously are observing the South Africa's election and the fallout from the ANC getting as low as 40% for the first time ever in a democratic country. Any thoughts, any opinions on what you've seen?
Well, I think it's fantastic that we've got a far more contested set of political parties now in our national government. I think that's a positive step, Ashraf. I think for the health fight, we do need more contestation. We do need better alternatives. And I think we've seen a few new parties come up, which is encouraging. And we are seeing people, certainly the electorate, saying we want something different to what we've had for the last 10, 15 years. And it's not what the ANC's been offering. I think what now remains to be seen is, whether this new mix of parties, with this new mix of power and balance of power, will deliver more what South Africa needs, which is often the basics of living decent lives.
And just lastly, in terms of, you've probably observed there's a chance of a coalition government or a government of national unity. Any thoughts, any opinions in terms of what would be the right fix or the right mix? In 30 seconds, yeah?
I don't really know. Ashraf, for me, it's less about the mix of the parties, although I know that's important, but whether we will have leaders, individuals of integrity who will say, I will act to serve the interest of South African people. That's what I think we need.
And that's where we can leave it, because I think that last point needs to be amplified. Leaders with integrity, says a leader with integrity, Athol Williams, anti-corruption whistleblower to flee South Africa effectively, then study at Oxford, finish his PhD there, and then lecture there, and now an honorary fellowship at Harvard College, which is part of Oxford. Athol Williams, great chatting to you, and just listening to you inspires us that just maybe we have the type of leadership in the country that can be amplified, that can change things in a whiff. There we are.
Channel your inner adventurer on Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30 on S3 as we're bathing in mud on an Eastern Cape safari. Blackwater tubing Storms River, free-falling over Plet, having the time of our lives, cooking with South Africa's trailblazing salt chefs, and searching for the world's only whale crier in Hermanus. That's Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30, repeat Sunday at 1 p.m. on S3.
The battle between the Super Eagles and Bafana Bafana is an ongoing grudge that will never end. They both believe their style of football is superior. The West clashes with Southern Africa. This is the FIFA World Cup African qualifiers. Catch Africa's great football rivalry. Nigeria versus South Africa. On Friday, 7 June at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
All right, we'll have a podcast of that conversation with Athol Williams up pretty shortly. So listen out for that. So much to pick out of that conversation, right? As well as the conversation I had with Koos van der Merwe early on. And he said many things, including ANC, DA, IFP. Don't look beyond that in terms of coalition or government of national unity. Right, let's get to further calls now. LG in Linden. Hi, LG.
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon indeed. Good to connect with you. I can see Linden from where I'm sitting right now on the 6th floor of the SABC HQ, in Orchard Park. Yeah,
it's fine. The DA, IFP, it's a no-no for me. I heard you saying that, how can we sort of like exclude, the party that has garnered 20% of the national vote. But every other political party matters, especially if you got, it doesn't matter whether you got 1%. Why should we exclude the one that got 1% in favor of the party that was rejected by 80% of the voters of South Africa? So ANC must not speak as if they are some big brother of anybody, because they didn't win the election. They must not even use the word invite in their lexicon. When they speak, they must not say we sort of like inviting other politicians. No, who are they inviting? Because they didn't win in the election. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the right to be talking about inviting anyone, because they didn't win the election. So it can't be. So I don't know. Maybe someone can explain to me why and how is it that the ANC should be telling us that they will be inviting other as if they are doing us favors.
Okay, you got that. So you're saying the whole lexicon is just wrong. They shouldn't be inviting.
Yeah,
okay,
they shouldn't
got
be
that.
talking about inviting.
Okay, now look, I mean, maybe we're all naive. I don't know, including me. Maybe we've never been in a position where in South Africa a party has got less than 50% in a democratic election. So maybe it's the first time, and maybe the norm is that the party with the most votes, not the majority, in fact, then is invited to set up a coalition or an NG, Government of National Unity. Thanks for that call, LG. Let's get to now Nelson Mandela Bay. Lots of atrocious weather, both in KZN, as you know, but certainly as well in the Eastern Cape region. Now, the President Ramaphosa, has been there today. Let's get an update in terms of what he saw and the implications thereof with Nandipa Plaiki, SABC News reporter in Nelson Mandela Bay. Nandipa, appreciate your time. You're on the National Pulse.
Thank you, and good afternoon to the listeners as well.
Thank you. Right. So the President was there. What did he observe?
Well, the President did arrive in Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality in Garissa, to be specific. He arrived at the town hall, and there was a brief briefing as he was briefed by the different people involved in helping with the flooding. And he went on to visit different places that were affected. He went to a community hall in Lapland, which is one of the places that was affected, to speak to the people there as they are still posted in the hall. He also proceeded to go to a bridge that had collapsed in the area to assess the situation and see what work has been done. Also, Volkswagen in Garissa was affected. He also did go to visit Volkswagen as well.
And give us, your assessment of the overall damage in that region.
Well, the damage is estimated to be costing a lot of money. Last night, there was a meeting held, a council meeting held at the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality offices, where they decided to write a letter to the National Treasury for assistance with 155 million rand to assist with the flood damages in the area. So it's had an extensive damage because there's infrastructure damage, road damages, electricity and water was affected, and thousands of people were displaced.
Do we still have you there in Nandipa? The last word was displaced, which sounds rather significant. Okay, I think we've just lost Nandipa. If we don't get it back, let's see if we can just try and connect with some voice notes that we've had. Right. So here's one on the volunteering. The conversation I had with the UN representative.
Hey Ashraf, regarding the volunteering opportunities at the UN. Oh my God. I think I've been trying for almost 10 years now. It's very, very difficult. They always look for a master's and above, which is fine. But what seems to be a challenge for me is that they will then demand a language like French, Portuguese, Swahili. And in South Africa, there's very few of us that are speaking those languages. So you then get our other African brothers and sisters getting those opportunities because of the language. Yeah, man. But those are great opportunities. And one other thing that really is an issue for me is when you have to volunteer in the country where there's a war. And I'm always like, nah. Like, especially they will ask someone who speaks English, but they will say, go to a country where there's a war. And I'm like, nah, thanks, Sibongi.
Oh my God, Sibongi going to a war. In fact, that's what the guest told me. It's like, Ashraf, maybe when you got time, you could do some reporting from war zone. Like, no, I don't want to do that. We're brave, but we're not that brave. But I get your point, absolutely. And yeah, it's a point valid. Well, of course, you speak English, which many other countries don't, but others speak different languages that I think puts you clearly at a disadvantage, right? Let's get another comment about the DA story.
Hi, Ashraf. Chris from Pietermaritzburg. I just wonder if people ever think that the DA did not only get 7% of votes if they want to make it a white party, That's round about how many percentage of South Africa is still filled with white people. And many of us that's white did not vote for the DA, but other parties that we think are more up for the task. So I'm just sometimes wondering why people are still talking about the white party if the majority of the voters would not be white.
Okay, I think you raise an important point. You may not like their politics. I think the general issue is that the DA is slow on transformation compared to other parties, just about every other party. And they've also sort of done away with issues like, affirmative action and BE, fundamental tools to try and attain transformation. That gives them the title or the labeling of a white party. Also, there are very, very few significant black leaders within that party. And that's another issue. Having said that, you're right. Numerically, you can't say the DA is a white party. Numerically, that's just not true, okay? But perceptions in terms of what it's seen to doing and whose purpose it serves, well, that's another whole conversation. Let's think about that. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 4:30. Here's Madupi.
Thanks, Mr. Garda, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, the IFP says it'll take a well-considered decision on whether to participate in a government of national unity as proposed by the ANC. The EFF says it'll not serve in a government of national unity alongside the DA and the FF+, which it describes as representatives of white colonialism. And Somalia has been elected to serve at the UN Security Council as a non-permanent member for 2 years. And those are your headlines. Full news update at 5.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, queuing traffic reported on multiple routes in the Crown area. Bryanston Drive has a crash reported near Coatesmore Road. Witkoppen Road in Johannesburg North has a crash reported near Church Street, and Summit Road westbound in Midrand has delays at Blue Hills. In KZN, the N3 eastbound has a crash before Spaghetti Junction. The N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The N3 eastbound in Pinetown is queuing towards Marion Hill Toll Plaza, and the R102 slow moving through Central Tongaat. In the Eastern Cape, the R61 has a road collapse incident reported between Tata and Port St. John's, with stop-go controls at 2 locations, and trucks are prohibited. In Cape Town, the N2 inbound has a stationary truck at Rappenberg Road. The M5 southbound is stationary vehicle near Milner Road. Viking Way eastbound in Epping is slow moving. That's towards the N7 Jakes Hadwell Drive. Victoria Road outbound is slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, to me, what are we going to talk about now?
We're talking about tonight's game between Nigeria and South Africa.
Did you say
By
tomorrow?
mistake, I said tomorrow. It's happening tonight at 9.
I'm listening. I'm saying, hold it. I've made a note, 9 p.m. tonight. I know that. Now you're causing a problem because I've got other things to do tomorrow, but I need to watch Bafana and Nigeria tonight.
It's
tonight. Okay, go ahead.
It's tonight, and we heard from newly appointed Nigeria coach Finidi George saying that Bafana will face a different Super Eagles to the one that they faced at the Africa Cup of Nations tournament earlier this year in Cote d'Ivoire. The two teams meet in a 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifier, and George sounds very confident with his plan.
I would say, AFCON is gone. We all saw the game. We knew it was a difficult one, but at the end of the day, we won it. So that is important. This is a World Cup qualifier. I think we're going to play definitely differently in tomorrow's match. So the AFCON has gone. This will be a different ball game, and tomorrow we'll see how it will all play out. So I'm quite confident in our capacity and what we're going to do tomorrow. So I'm not quite worried. AFCON is gone. This is World Cup qualifier. We want to win. We want to qualify for the next World Cup. So all hands on deck, and we'll see how we can push tomorrow to get that victory.
Meanwhile, Orlando Pirates have announced that goalkeepers Richard Ofori, Siyabonga Mponjane and forward Kermit Erasmus and midfielder Tabang Monare will leave the club when their contracts expire at the end of the month. Ofori has been with the Buccaneers for 3 seasons, while Erasmus' second stint with the Pirates lasted 2 campaigns. Mponjane, meanwhile, was the oldest player to represent the Buccaneers this past season at the age of 38, and Monare has featured in 93 matches for the Sea Robbers. Elsewhere, Robert Lewandowski says that he's relishing a return for the Euro 2024 to Germany, where he enjoyed an illustrious playing career before moving to Barcelona. The 35-year-old has a deep impression, or left a deep impression, first at Borussia Dortmund and then at Bayern Munich, having won 10 Bundesliga titles between 2010 and 2022. Lewandowski is also the joint record holder of 7 Bundesliga top scorer awards alongside Thomas Müller. Then in cricket, Sri Lanka have complained to the International Cricket Council over their T20 World Cup treatment and conditions in the United States. Sports Minister Harin Fernando alleged that other teams had it better and said that Sri Lanka had lodged a formal protest after the squad was held up by a 7-hour flight delay at a Florida airport. And he said that Sri Lanka had also been given accommodation more than 90 minutes drive from the practice stadium when they reached New York. And he said that India's team had been put up much closer. Remember, Sri Lanka lost to the Proteas by 6 wickets in their opening match on Monday in New York. In the meantime, New Zealand captain Kane Williamson hailed the T20 World Cup's expansion to 20 nations after co-host United States beat Pakistan yesterday in one of the biggest upsets in the tournament's history. The World Cup, also co-hosted by the West Indies, has an extra 4 teams, giving fledgling cricket nations more big tournament experience while also raising concerns their presence could be more one-sided results. Then in tennis, Carlos Alcaraz and Yannick Sinner are currently facing off in a blockbuster French Open semi-final today. Sinner took the first set to 6 and Alcaraz came back 6-3. They currently in their third set, and this clash is or will be the first men's singles semi-final at Roland Garros contested between 2 players under the age of 23 since 2008, when Rafa Nadal beat Djokovic en route to his 4th title. Then finally, in terms of the business of sports, we're still talking all things Comrades Marathon that is coming up. The winners in both the men's and women's divisions will receive a total of 825,000 rands. In addition to that, there's a 50,000 rand hotspot prize available to the first man and woman that will go through the Cell C hotspot located in Cato Ridge. And then the prize money will be paid down to the 10th place, which will see the last one getting 33,000 rands.
And you'll get yours in
5 years' time.
5 years' time. Got that.
I wonder. Probably I'll get the 33,000 rands.
Get working, get running on the Comrades. By the way, anybody running in the Comrades on Sunday, right? Yeah.
On Sunday.
Anybody running in the Comrades? Remember before it was on May 31st, by the way. Some trivia. May 31st, always a public holiday. And then it changed when South Africa changed, because that was it's called Republic Day. So to celebrate apartheid South Africa. And then Bruce Fordyce, the Comrade legend, ran with a black armband to show his solidarity with the anti-apartheid movement. What a story. Yeah.
I always love the stories of some of the runners that are running for whatever cause that they have. It's always interesting to see what they do for whatever cause that they're doing to run 87 kilometers.
Well, there you are. You're right. There we are. But Bruce Fordyce's black armband did it for me. Okay.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, we're going to connect with, as always, with the representative from Markway Fund Managers in just a moment or so. Here's a question. The GNU proposal by the ANC is a clever, safer choice for them in that it won't alienate their members. And they've tried embracing everyone so that anyone who rejects their approach, like the anarchists, the MK and the EFF, will be exposed for the party poopers that they are. I'm encouraged by the IFP and DA's initial positive response, and I hope they'll cooperate. I agree with Van der Merwe that the fewer the parties involved in the GNU, as was in the case in 94, the more stable the government will be. I hope the party agreements will be made public so we can have something to measure their performance against. At the moment, thanks for that, Farai. At the moment, it's not even about the agreements. I just don't know which parties are going to come together. I don't know, and you don't know. Paswani Mpatlele is with me, Senior Portfolio Manager at Markway Fund Managers. Good chatting to you as always, Paswani. Let's talk local and global markets.
Afternoon, Ashraf, and to all our listeners. Happy Friday. Looking into the markets, it's the much anticipated employment rate coming from the US was disappointing. It was higher than expected, Ashraf, and this is because we saw their growth was hotter. They saw 272 employment higher, wages were higher. Meanwhile, unemployment rose to 4%, and this just confirmed that we shouldn't be expecting a signaling of rate cuts for July, while September is still on the cards. And this was supported by bond yields being trading higher along with the dollar, resulting in equities lower. And it wasn't seen as, because it wasn't seen as good news, especially for the rate path. The negative sentiment also spilled over to some of the commodities, with the likes of gold pairing over 2%, with further pressure coming from China stopping their 18th month buying spree, but has not broken trend in terms of gold because it's still bullish on a trade level, because we're looking at that 2,300 level. And still on China, they reported a higher than expected export numbers, up 7.6, the strongest since the start of the year for them, as foreign demand is still strong. Meanwhile, imports were slightly higher by 1%, this giving them a trade surplus. Meanwhile, when we look into Russia, Putin on its St. Petersburg International Economic Forum said that the cutoff from the West has seen their trade turnover just almost close to 40% in terms of their currency, and they continue to seek boosting this share in terms of settlement when they look into some of their BRIC member countries. On a local front, investors remain focused on the development of the government of unity proposal by ANC and its uptake. The rand is slightly looking positive to these things in its current signaling. The US market is down when we look at the overall performance, with the Nasdaq up down 0.2. S&P was flat. Dow managed to eke out a 0.1 gain. Looking into Europe, the DAX was down 0.5, CAC down 0.3, and FTSE down 0.32. Locally, we took on that global negative sentiment. JSE was down 0.4, drank mainly by resource sector as commodities were down. The resource sector was down 1.9, industrials down 0.7, and financials eking out gains of 1%. Ashraf, into the commodity space quickly, we look at the gold price that is down 2.5% on these developments at $2,314 an ounce. Platinum was down 2.8 at $982 an ounce. Oil was up 0.4 at $80.18. And when we close it down with the rand, we're looking at its performance that looks relatively much better. Rand against the dollar is at 18.83, rand against the euro 20.37, and rand against the pound 23.96.
Okay, and anything else you'd like to add? Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. We're good.
Okay, great. Have a great weekend. We'll connect with you guys on Monday. Absolutely. Paswani Patlele from Markway Fund Managers. Okay, let's get to the calls. So, by the way, let me just tell you this. So, listen, the issue of coalition and GNU is not going to go away, and the different parties, in particular the top four, the ANC, the DA, the MK party, and the EFF, and a lot of conversation about where the DA fits into all of this now. We speak to Solly Malaitse coming from the DA, coming up shortly in a few minutes' time, in fact. So looking forward to that conversation. Let's get to callers now. Botsano in Rosebank. Hi.
Hi, good afternoon, my brother. Thank you for taking my call.
Good. You're in Rosebank in Joburg, right? I'm just trying to...
Yes, I'm in Johannesburg. Remember the first time you were in the job there, I told you that I've got an appointment with the ANC people.
I know you told me that. And I told the guy from Linden I can virtually see Linden from where I am. I can virtually see the buildings of Rosebank where I am right now. I'm just over Auckland Park. So there we are. Okay. But anyway, give me your thoughts, Botano.
This government of national unity is a precursor of the ANC to set up a coalition between themselves and National Party.
And which party? Wait, sorry, did you say National Party?
I've said National Party.
All right.
It will never change in the National Party. If you want me to be nice, I would say DA.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then they are building a business case for them to tell those people that are putting conditions to them, saying, look, other people, they don't want to agree with us, so National Party is with us. 60% of South Africans have rejected the crooked ANC. 60%. 60% of South Africans in 1994, they agreed with the ANC. They give them a mandate, go and govern this country well. They mess up. They were crooked. They were thieving.
Okay, but
now they pretend as if they've won the election. That's nonsense.
All right, but they're not pretending they've won the election. I think honestly that's off the mark. If they were, if they pretended that they'd won the election, why would they be sweating like they are sweating right now to form a government?
No, they're confusing people that don't know them. The big business have told them that they have to work with National Party, and they're pushing that agenda and the goal. Okay, they must continue, and then after that, they must set up a government with National Party in Johannesburg, in Kuruleni.
Okay. You know what? We're going to call you the Minister of Information. You got it all mapped out, Butano. Thanks for that call. Calling it the National Party. Goodness, man. We then need to ask the DA representative about just that. Let's get to Grant in Cape Town. Hi, Grant.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Glad to hear your voice back on the radio.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Couple of observations from my side. I mean, your earlier caller talking about the DA being perceived to be a white party.
Yeah.
I think he makes a very good point.
Yeah.
But I think equally the DA has got some work to do to rebuild their reputation as a more representative party. I think the other thing is that if the DA was a kind of a whites-only party, how come it's actually in such a strong position in the Western Cape? Anyway, that's probably enough on that topic.
Yeah, but I think you raise a valid point, right? That they, whatever it is, they are able to connect with people outside of the traditional base. So the argument is not they don't have white, they only have white people, because they have others, right? The big issue is they certainly don't have, enough, if you're going to call it black and brown people in leadership positions. They just don't have it.
Absolutely.
And they don't seem to speak, and they don't seem to speak for them. So there's a disconnect. Yeah. That's really the big issue. Yeah.
And that's their challenge. They've got to fix that.
Yeah.
But the other thing I just want to perhaps highlight to you is that the ANC 30 years ago was given a hell of a very, very strong package of government departments and systems that worked. And they've absolutely covered themselves in the poop. In 30 years, they've systematically destroyed everything. And so now I wonder how much regret there is, because they've messed so much up. They must be really regretting what they've done, and now they're in a position where they've got to compromise and beg for partners to come and govern the country with them. So they've really spectacularly messed things up. But sorry, just one last point is the COSATU. Every time the ANC steps out of line, historically, COSATU threatens to withdraw, and they never do. So now COSATU are threatening to cause trouble if the ANC jumps into bed with the DA. But, I mean, their track record shows that COSATU is a whole bunch of guys walking around in red tracksuits, which hold news conferences, and they absolutely amount to nothing. They're absolutely
well, I hear you. Let's move on. I mean, I think the point. Thanks for that call, Grant. But I mean, here's the point that Athol Williams said that what's happened in this election represents a huge opportunity for South Africa, because for the first time we have options and we have a rethink about how we're going to govern our country. I'm paraphrasing. Please listen to the podcast of my conversation with Athol Williams that took place about half an hour ago. It's a really important conversation. A lot of things that he said, well, you need to just sort of consider all those points. But it does represent, so on the negative side for the ANC is like, what did we do? What have we done from dominating the South African political landscape for 3 decades in the name of the Nelson Mandelas of the world? Like, where are we now? On the other hand, not for the ANC, but for all of us, there's also turmoil because we can't seem to we can't fix things. But it also represents an opportunity for a complete rethink in terms of how the leaders of all the political parties truly lead. And talking about that, we'll chat to Bantu Alamisa. He's got some plans. We'll talk to him after 5 o'clock. Okay, we're going to talk about the DA and the DA's plans right after this.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
We should be chatting to Solly Malatsi coming up shortly. In fact, I think we do have him on the line. So, Solly Malatsi, the DA national spokesperson, is with us. Good chatting to you, and you're live with the National Pulse.
Thanks for the opportunity and greetings to your listeners.
Right. What's your pulse rate like now?
No, it's fine. I'm doing well.
I suppose I could ask you, what's the national pulse rate like? Any thoughts on that?
Look, I think there's a lot of suspense and there's a lot of anticipation, which is not misplaced, given that we are in very charted, unknown territory, and there's also just a lot of speculation taking place at this stage. But I think everyone is interested in trying to get to finality on this, but we've got 14 days, and those days are getting closer and closer.
Exactly. We've got like almost 7 days at the weekend already done, right? So I've heard lots of things from the DA in terms of two positions. The DA can't run the country on its own, like the ANC also can't do so. So two options that came to mind immediately. One is DA in a coalition if they are asked to join another party, in this case the ANC, and the DA as part of a government of national unity. And even today, between one of the DA spokespersons as well as your leader, John Steenhuisen, I've heard some ambiguity, contradictions. I'm not too sure. So set the record straight for us. What's the DA's position right now in terms of the talks around the talks taking place in the country?
Well, look, I think the DA's position at this stage is, given the announcement that was made yesterday by the president, which, by the way, was the very first time we are hearing any substantive indication of what the ANC's proposal is with regards to this period is in. So from our side, as we have indicated before, that we remain committed to being a contributor in finding stability during this time, and we have taken the position that we will continue to engage with the other parties, including the ANC, and we need to find out from the ANC the finer details of the proposal that was announced yesterday by the president, so that when we engage, we can engage knowing in depth what the proposal is, because what was put out yesterday was far more generic, and we needed to get to how they view pragmatically the government of national unity happening. And then from there will be a series of events that happens. One would be that there would be feedback by the DA's negotiating team to the federal executive, and that feedback will then filter into another feedback session with the DA's Federal Council, which is the highest decision-making body of the party, in between congresses, for a final position in terms of what has been presented and how we think we can play a role in there.
Okay, so I understand it's complex, and it may even be more complex in the next few days. So let's deal with what we know. What we now know is that the ANC position is they're not seeking a coalition agreement, which could be with one or two parties, whoever they may be. The DA could be one of them. But they are seeking a broad-based government of national unity. Do you have any thoughts, without knowing the nuts and bolts of what they're saying, on the broad principle of a GNU versus a coalition in terms of what's right for the country?
Look, I think a GNU has its own advantages and complexities, and I think one of the complexities were highlighted by the president yesterday, because across the political spectrum you have parties that stand on different sides of issues, but even more so given the broad nature that he indicated in terms of, respect to the Constitution, protection of, the Bill of Rights. He also mentioned something which we share, that there are parties that, are not in support of some aspects of our Constitution. And that will make it very difficult, for instance, for a party like ours to be part of anything with such role players. But we also recognize that at this very stage, it is key to remain committed to, at the very least, the process of negotiating, so that we can understand in depth what is on the table and take it from there. And I think the most important thing in here is whatever gets agreed on or doesn't get agreed on also makes sense to our own internal party structures, which is why that process of internal party consultation is very important.
Okay. Koos van der Merwe, a long-serving member of the IFP, he is very adamant in my conversation with him earlier on, and you can listen to the podcast of that, was that the broad-based government of national unity is not going to work. Too many parties, too complicated. The best is if it's just maybe 2 or 3, and whether you want to call it 2 or 3 as part of a GNU or 2 or 3 as part of a coalition, he's saying ANC, IFP, and the DA. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I understand why he would say that, and I think that's a sentiment that has been made by several other people. But as I said earlier, ultimately, what makes sense to the external world must also make sense internally to us, for instance, as the DA, and I presume to also our friends in the IFP. And the key thing is, even if it may make sense, you still need to thresh it out in finer detail, because unfortunately at this stage, we don't have a reference point in terms of previous experiences, because this would be the first time in the history of our country that we have some form of arrangement at that level. And what we are doing with the engagements that are upcoming, and some of which have taken place, is to try to get to a point wherein every aspect that is associated with the prospect of any model that may be developed at the end, so that we don't walk into this thing blindly, and that we walk into it understanding what is actually at play.
Okay, I see that Floyd Shivambu from the EFF is they had a presser today, and he's put his position that in fact they will not form a government with the DA and the Freedom Front Plus. What do you make of that?
Well, I think our views on the EFF are well known, and the EFF is entitled to their views. For us, at this stage, there is a proposal that has been put on the table by the president of the country, and we want to understand the practical elements of that proposal, negotiate in good faith, and take it from there.
Okay, but let's get clarity on this. Is it correct to say, if you are invited to be part of the government of national unity by the ANC, and amongst that broad-based GNU would include the would include the EFF, would you reject it?
I'll be getting ahead of myself. Federal Council will make that position on Monday.
Okay, so it's not clear cut either way.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
And the same with the MK.
Sorry? Yeah, I think we have previously pronounced on our relationships with certain parties that we've got great discomfort with. At the very same time, we are also mindful that what has been put on the table as of yesterday is something new, and we are committed to, at the very least, trying to understand how the ANC views this in practical terms, considering that there are some irreconcilable positions across some parties that have been invited.
Okay, so that's important to clear up, because what you're saying, quite right, and we've heard it before, in principle, you wouldn't want to have anything to do with the EFF and the MK, in principle. Having said that, because of the changing terrain, you may reconsider it depending on what comes out of the conversations of your federal council and the actual deal from the ANC. Is that right?
I think what I'm saying is that at the very least, we just want to hear it out and then take it from there. But our position on those other parties is well known.
Okay. What do you make of the level of opposition to the DA from within the ANC membership ranks? And it's been widespread. The amount of callers we've had in the last few days, like, to not deal with the DA, not at all. What do you make of that?
Well, I think every party has its own internal dynamics, and our focus is not to be distracted by what happens in terms of the internal happenings in another party. It's very clear that there is a division of opinion in the ANC, or some quarters of the ANC, and some of the wild statements that have been made, we do not share them, and there is sufficient evidence that can easily refute that. Our focus is, our negotiating team has a mandate from the party, and they are going to negotiate in good faith. They are going to remain committed to these endeavors to try and find stability to our country, and then they will have to come back to the internal structures of the party, and that will inform our position.
Okay. Does the DA have a preference? And understand that you have less leverage at 20% plus. Even the ANC's got less leverage than a week ago, right? But do you have a preference in terms of a coalition or government of national unity?
Well, where we are now is not to get into preferences based on just the name of the party, but to say that there are broader values that we believe are fundamental. And if there is agreement on those values, then we can work together. But if there is no reconciliation on those values, it just makes any other arrangement very, very difficult, because it doesn't take away those differences. And on a day-by-day basis, those can become very obstructionist once you get into some form of arrangement.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. We will certainly follow what happens over the weekend, and then certainly with your federal council as well. And we'll definitely talk about that next week. Solly Malatsi, thanks for your time. Much appreciated. And here's the question. Who wants to be the DA? In fact, who wants to be the ANC? Who wants to be the EFF? Who wants to be the MK party? I don't know. We're going to chat to Bantu Holomisa coming up just after the news. Looking forward to that conversation. It's 5 o'clock. Greg Host in the hot seat with the news.
Thank you and good afternoon to you, Ashraf. In this news update, IFP weighs in on Government of National Unity and Somalia elected to the UN Security Council. Good day to you. The IFP says it will take a well-considered decision on whether to take part in a government of national unity as proposed by the ANC. The party says it's been engaging widely with various parties, including the ANC, the DA and NFP, since the election results were released on Sunday. The IFP has been able to garner 17 seats in the National Assembly, has the second highest seats in KZN after the MK party, and also has a presence in Gauteng. The IFP's Mkhuleko Klengo.
The IFP Coalition's task team will now engage with the ANC and other parties further and report back to the IFP NEC on Monday, 10 June 2024. The IFP will broaden the scope of its engagement with other parties, particularly as we all grapple with the possibility, viability and dynamics of a government of national unity. In principle, the IFP is not averse to a GNU. However, the devil is in the details, which will become clearer in the coming days, thus enabling the IFP to make a well-considered decision.
The EFF says it will not serve in a government of national unity alongside the DA and the FF+, which it describes as representatives of white colonialism. The party was reacting to a proposal on the formation of a government of national unity by the ANC. The EFF Central Elections Task Force has been meeting in Sandton, north of Johannesburg, to review the outcome of last week's elections and chart a way forward with regards to power sharing with other parties. The EFF's Deputy President, Floyd Shivambu.
We are not going to form part of any government with the Democratic Alliance. We're not going to sit alongside the Democratic Alliance and Freedom Front Plus in government as the economic freedom fighters. And we are not desperate for positions in government. We're not going to do everything in our power so that we're appointed into cabinet or we become speakers of parliament and all of those things. We're not going to sit alongside the land thieves. We're not going to sit alongside the people who got to benefit unlawfully for a very long time from colonialism and apartheid. We're not going to sit alongside them and constitute the government of South Africa.
Representatives for the Post Office Business Rescue Practitioners have met with workers' representatives in Pretoria regarding retrenchment payouts. The Joint Business Rescue Practitioners say they'll commence making payments to the over 5,000 workers retrenched by the Post Office in April. Makube Rabura is the acting head of legal for the Business Rescue Practitioners.
As we are sitting here, guys, already a touch base has been issued clarifying that payment is coming. Whoever said payment is not coming, that's a lie. Payment is coming. You will start receiving your payments from next week.
From next week. From when? Please say clearly.
You will start receiving your payments from next week. Payments are being loaded. You will start receiving your payments from next week.
While the collection and distribution of relief aid is going smoothly in Tongaat, north of Durban, donors are being asked to spare a thought for those with pets or animals that have been injured in Monday's tornado. A local animal hospital is now calling for dog and cat food, bowls, blankets and bedding to help those rescued animals recover from the disaster. Solashni Simon is from the Animal Zone Veterinary Hospital.
The amount of support we've had from people has been quite phenomenal. And I think when we think of animals in disaster, we must always remember that we can't forget that with animals there's always people there. that will always protect them, irrespective of whether you have a cat or whether you have a dog. I think it's human nature, it's the human spirit that will overcome and get through, especially a disaster like this.
Somalia has been elected to serve at the UN Security Council as a non-permanent member for 2 years. Somalia last served on the council in 1972. This new endorsement means it will serve on the most powerful organ of 15 members. Its term is from January 2025 to 2026. Researcher in African Affairs, Dr. Abdul Karim.
It is very significant. To me, at least, it's very significant. You see, Somalia for the last 30 years was always in the news on the wrong reasons. Either there is a bomb or someone has died or it was famine or hunger. But now, since last year, things are moving into a different direction. Now Somalia is always for the right reason.
The top story, the IFP says it will take a well-considered decision on whether to take part in a government of national unity as proposed by the ANC. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khoes.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Khadebe hails Hugo Bruce ahead of Bafana's World Cup qualifier against Nigeria tonight, and Bulls make 2 forced changes. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. In Bedfordview, the N3 northbound is queuing on the ramp to the N12 east at Gilulis Interchange, and the N12 R24 westbound is slow moving on both routes towards Gilulis Interchange. The N12 eastbound in Germiston has a stationary vehicle near Jet Park Road exit. The N12 westbound has a crash reported on the link to the N1 north at Dipkloof Interchange. Main Reef Road in Crown has a crash at Church Street, queuing traffic in the area. And this coming Saturday, the Bulls will host Benetton in a quarter-final clash at Loftus Versfeld with kick-off at 3:30, so expect delays on local routes. In KZN, the Comrades Marathon will be taking place on Sunday, so road closures between Durban and Pietermaritzburg will start from 4 a.m. until 6 p.m. for the uprun. And of course, full details are available at www.comrades.com. The N2 northbound has a stationary vehicle before Sibaya Drive exit. The N3 eastbound in Pinetown is queuing towards Marion Hill Toll Plaza, and the R102 is slow moving through central Tongaat. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound has a stationary vehicle at Lisbeek Parkway, queuing traffic through Hospital Bend. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound also queuing towards Hospital Bend. The M5 southbound has a crash near Milner Road, and the M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Channel your inner adventurer on Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30 on S3 as we're bathing in mud on an Eastern Cape safari. Blackwater tubing Storms River, free-falling over Plet, having the time of our lives, cooking with South Africa's trailblazing salt chefs, and searching for the world's only whale crier in Hermanus. That's Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30, repeat Sunday at 1 p.m. on S3.
TS Galaxy Queens and Richmond United ladies both love it in the top half. They want to go as high as possible but not willing to share any points. This is the Hollywood Men's Super League. Catch them Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. TS Galaxy Queens FC tackles Richmond United Ladies FC on Sunday 9 June at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
And as we ask ourselves the obvious question, what is it that drives the National Pulse today? The comments around what may happen around the government of national unity just flies in every time. BB saying, Ashraf, people are screaming and shouting. It was so loud for voters not to bring down the ANC. They never foresee or foresaw the consequences, right? Another one, Ashraf, have you seen the latest survey? The vast majority of people in South Africa want a DA-ANC coalition. This makes sense, and what you fail to see is that the DA policies are a long-term macro package that works around the world. We have to go that way to save the country, not the short-term ruinous left-wing policies from AB in J Bay. Nice part of the world, by the way, J Bay, I'm just thinking. And maybe the last one just for now, the DA mustn't be allowed to get into government through backdoor. You win elections to be in government. In fact, that will apply to everybody. I can respond to that. Every party would have to get in through the back door because no party's got 50%. The question is, which back door do they open up and who joins them through the back door and which table do they sit on? Important questions. I'll look at your calls, and if you have a thought on that, we'll also play a package regarding the EFF presser that took place early on today. But if you have an opinion, you can call in 0614 104 107. That's WhatsApp, text or voice notes. But to call in live, it's 086 000 2032. So, understandably, all the parties, I think 18 parties will be represented in Parliament this time around. Everybody has an opinion. They're all looking at the impact of decisions that will have an impact on their future. One such, understandably so, would be the United Democratic Movement, UDM. General Bantu Holomisa is their leader, and he, I understand, has written a letter to the Chief Justice Zondo, around convening a meeting. Let's find out more about that and what that really means. General Holomisa, appreciate your time. Hi.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Right. So understand you've written, is it just you yourself or other parties have written to Chief Justice Zondo? What have you requested?
The ACDP, ATM, BOSA, PAC, UAT and UDM had a meeting this morning to respond to the recent results of the elections. And of course, some of us were complainants, and we filed our complaints with the IEC. So we're looking into their responses. But whilst we were discussing that, the issue of a proposed government of national unity, as it was outlined or suggested by the president of the ANC yesterday evening, featured in our discussions. Mm-hmm. And we felt that if it's going to be a government of national unity, it means all parties in parliament must be consulted. Not necessarily that all parties will form part of the government, but there are procedures which would need to be clarified as to how the parliament will work, accountability, oversight, and so on. And we felt that we cannot direct this clarity who would clarify for this, because the person who was addressing or announcing this, it was President Cyril Ramaphosa in his capacity as a leader of the ANC.
Yeah.
He was not wearing a cap of being a head of government. So we then resolved that who should we approach to get clarity, because the days of being sworn in are coming closer. And the confusion whether we are going to have a government of national unity or the coalition. Coalition is easy to establish because you talk to those parties and exchange the views and so on. But once you talk of a government of national unity, it implies that everyone must understand the rules and regulations of the game. Mm-hmm. So we opted then to approach the office of the Chief Justice with a view for him to call all the parties which are represented in Parliament, party leaders, so that we can discuss this issue of government of national unity. In fact, the ANC would be given an opportunity to explain to the rest of us, and then those who opt to be part of that exercise, they can say, yes, we are not going to be part of this, because the government of national unity is different from the one we had in 1994.
Fair enough, yeah.
In 1994, the ANC won with big numbers. Today, ANC has been given only 40%. So it can never, therefore, be the only party which must champion this. They must come and present it to the 60% plus who have voted into parliament.
Okay, so you're talking about procedures, right? What we don't know is the nuts and bolts. So in terms of the procedures, did you find it strange, therefore, that the ANC president said he will invite other parties to form a government of national unity, meaning that the prerogative resided with him to invite other parties? Some people have taken exception to that.
No, well, that was the view of his party. That's precisely why we say we want somebody now who can chair this session and be invited to present that. Maybe it could be at the end of the day, there might be no need for government of national unity.
But why? What do you think are the options? If not, we don't have a majority party. That's a fact. We know that. We're far off from that. So loose understanding, coalition or government of national unity. Coalition would mean one or two parties to get, that combination above 50%. Government of national unity would mean a combination of many parties who all are saying, let's sit together and we're going to govern together, right? I mean, do you see another option?
Well, if the GNU approach or suggestion fails, then the next approach would be for ANC to talk to other parties they think alike to form a coalition government. Simple as that.
Yeah.
But once you say government of national unity, then the rules need to be clarified for us, even those who will not be in government. But it's not about cabinet posts here. It's about how the parliament will operate.
Yeah. Why did you feel there's a need to go to the Chief Justice? Meaning, besides him, effectively pronouncing over the president when that president is appointed soon, what other role could he play that the parties themselves and the party leaders themselves can't play by simply getting together?
Well, unfortunately, if the president of the ANC had or had been advised perhaps to call everybody earlier, we wouldn't be talking about Chief Justice now. But where we are going to have a new system, it cannot be imposed on any party. We just need a platform. But I hope that the president himself, after he has heard what we have said today, can still call a meeting of all political parties who are represented in parliament, the leaders, and then he presents that so that we don't end up putting the Chief Justice under unnecessary pressure.
Yeah. Regarding the parties that you matched today, right? You mentioned a whole lot of different parties, and my counting is not that good. I mean, are you in a position to deliver 10% to the ANC that will give the ANC and your grouping of parties the 50% plus if the government of national unity fails to be realized?
Well, we didn't go into that. I don't have a mandate to talk about that. For now, we just want to understand what is the meaning of this government of national unity, so that it must not be known by few, and then you end up saying, yes, we understand this, and then the voters out there ask questions where we cannot be able to answer them. So at least a little bit of transparency. How will it work? So President Ramaphosa and ANC must just come to the leaders collectively first, and then after that they can have bilateral meetings with parties who would be interested.
Okay. Do you think the government of national unity, this government of national unity, will work?
Will what?
Will it work?
Well, it will work if the parties, they are there is a sufficient consensus. And also, we must also remember that the decision at Government of National Unity are normally taken through consensus means. So we need that. We must also look at the voters' wishes. The voters have sent a message to say, we as 60% are not happy with the status quo. Go away, politicians, and come up with a workable solution. So ANC has proposed Government of National Unity. We say yes, but come forward, present it to us collectively, so that we can correct and make this thing workable.
Okay. Do you see yourself in terms of the negotiations around the Government of National Unity? I'm looking at, for example, the DA has got certain conditions. The EFF already have ruled out working with the DA and the Freedom Front Plus today. They've already done that, which means that you can't have a Government of National Unity and maybe two or three major parties not part of it. This is just a complete contradiction. My question to you, besides Justice Zondo's explanation, do you see yourself, General Holomisa, as an elder statesman in terms of politics in our country, taking on that role? And it's not about the numbers you bring for your party, but just the wisdom that you bring to it.
The United Democratic Movement, we have said this before, we put no conditions when it comes to the issues of coalition, government of coalition or government, or GNU government. Our main aim is to see to it that we put the interest of the country and its citizens. We are not even talking about or demanding what positions. We have demonstrated that in the government, at local government. Here in Gauteng, for instance, we have never demanded any position. So okay. That's a culture of the UDM. Let us sit down and find a solution quickly, because if we don't agree by the 14th day, as you know, we might be forced to go back and go for fresh elections, and that would be costly for the country and also other parties. Also, it would be a waste of time and money to go and do another round of elections. So we have to swallow our pride as leaders and find a solution.
Well, I think it's a point well made, and let me leave it at that, General Bantu Holomisa. Thank you for your time, leader of the UDM. So, I mean, yeah, like what he's saying is, if there are no solutions in terms of option 1 or option 2, option 3, at some stage, if you can't govern, you may have to go for a fresh election. If that were the case, and I certainly don't want that, but if that were the case, would you still vote for the same party you voted for a week and a half ago? Or would you change your mind completely? We'll get calls on the issues we've raised today, whatever it is that moves the national pulse, and we'll connect from that to that EFF presser that took place about an hour or so ago, right after this.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, let's get to some of the callers. George in Nongoma. Hi, George. George, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, George, you're live. Go ahead.
Yeah, Ashraf, let me comment about what the general has just said.
Yeah.
I find it very strange that our politicians are failing to calculate. And this thing of 60-40 is not actually 60-40, because we have the parties which are making up that 60 divided themselves, with a big chunk of that 60 going to the DA. You see, you can't then bargain on the 60% as a whole number. Rather, speak about your number, because I think we have now forgotten that when these elections, when the results of this election were announced, it was said that there is going to be a political realignment in South Africa. The results are saying so. But all these political parties that are the small political parties are not willing to close their doors and combine even that black vote that they are speaking about into one, so that we can be able to speak with one voice. But anyway, was not my topic today. Right. I just want to comment on this issue of race that is being thrown on this election. Let me start with the EFF. when we had the local government elections previously, the EFF said in Malema's voice that the DA is the better devil.
Right.
And they went into a collision with the DA in the municipalities. But after some time, they were not agreeing, and then it fell apart. Now, they know, EFF knows that if they agree to work with DA, they don't have any content to give to the voters in the future. Because this thing of promising people land, as if we get land, we are going to get rich as black people, is a false assumption. We are not going to get rich by the land. They had 30 years to deal with that issue, even when he was in the ANC. They did not do anything about the issue of land. So now we are being sold this narrative of the land being stolen by the whites. Of course, if that was the case. But if land is going to be brought back to the black people as from tomorrow, we are not going to get rich, all of us.
Okay.
The issues at hand here are unemployment, poverty, and other issues.
All right.
Not the issue of land.
Okay,
Let
okay.
them not be
George.
prioritized of other things.
All right, I got that. I hear you, and I think you may be right that it's not like a quick fix. It's far more complex than that. George in Nongoma. Thabo in Kroonstad. Go ahead, Thabo.
Yeah, Ashraf, thank you very much. I think the ANC must be commended for coming with this proposal instead of identifying the wrongs. And the other thing that I wanted to, the opposition must take the blame, Ashraf, because when Paul Mashatile was tasked by the government to try to come with some kind of a framework that will manage the possibility of having a coalition like we're having now, all the opposition parties had a problem. Now we're faced with this particular situation. Nobody knows if we are going forward or going backward. I think that is the opposition. That is why they are even failing to unite all of them. The ANC had to provide leadership. I'm very happy with the initiative that the ANC has done, because not even a single political party is coming with a solution as to how are we going to get out of this quagmire. And General Bantu Holomisa must not waste Chief Justice Zondo's time. These are political issues. If they are failing to resolve their political questions, they must not involve the Chief Justice, because these are political questions. There's a constitution that guides as to what has to happen when we are having this kind of a challenge. If they can't be able to agree on what has to happen, let them go to Parliament and vote. Whoever wins. Thank you.
Okay, got that. Well, I mean, I think you may be right, and I've sort of alluded that to in chatting to General Bantu Holomisa to say, like, why would your first choice be Justice Zondo when, in fact, what you need to be doing is getting the political parties to sit together? Surely that will happen sometime after this weekend. I'm pretty sure of that. Benny in Pretoria. Hi, Benny.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
Yeah, good talking to you, man. Right, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to comment on this rhetoric by the EFF and other people that land was stolen. Land was not stolen. Black people were defeated, obliterated, castigated. It's an ancient norm from long ago that people won land and resources through war. Blacks were defeated from ancient times. They don't even have history. This thing that land was stolen, why they're even defeated by the small minorities of Lesotho and Zimbabwe.
Okay, but what's your point about that? You're saying defeated in conquest with each other? I mean,
no.
Yeah.
This whole notion that land was stolen. Who stole land? The blacks were defeated. They were defeated in war. They were obliterated, and there's nothing that land was stolen. The thing we just have to work out this thing amicably.
Okay, got that. I hear you. I mean, I think the big question is what the solutions are. I don't think it's going to serve a purpose, and I've noticed that. But thanks for that call, Benny. I've noticed that, you know, many of the people who are now saying they don't want to deal with the DA, in fact, they were the DA like last week, man. That I think is puzzling, seriously. And I'm talking about political parties. So, like, how did they suddenly decide that we're going to raise this issue about the DA when, in fact, their position and their current position, and I'm certainly not here to speak for them, but here's the point, is not unconstitutional, their current position. You can debate that, but it's not. But all these parties, many of them, exclude the MK because they knew, they actually have done deals with the DA, right? Chico in Soweto, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good talking to you, Chico. Go ahead.
I'm good. Yeah, actually, I like to comment about the national government of government of national unity.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I welcome DA to be part of it. Understand? Because when you go back to the armed struggle, the MK was nowhere to be found during the riots of the mid 80s. It's only the student of Soweto who take part and gave the apartheid government a lesson. They fought those learners until the end. So MK was nowhere to be found, but we were singing Umkhonto yes, until today Umkhonto is.
All right, but quickly we're on to news time. Why the DA? Why would you support the DA when many support the DA part of the GNU when many others are not interested?
They've shown professionalism. They've proved themselves with Western Cape. They can say whatever, but they've shown professionalism.
Okay.
Understand?
All right, yeah. Chico got that professionalism as evidenced in the Western Cape. And of course, understandably, people will make comparisons between the DA's level of governance in one region and the ANC's level of governance in 8 others, as well as nationally, and see what works. We'll put that on pause. More calls. We'll take more calls, more opinions on and really that solution, government of national unity. If not what we have on the table now, government of national unity, coalition, then what? I mean, who's got that magic wand that can lead us the way forward? I don't know. Let's get the news headlines. Just Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf. A quick look at the headlines. Some political parties in KZN have welcomed the additional deployment of police officers in the province after the elections. The IFP says it will take a well-considered decision on whether to take part in a government of national unity, and several Sri Lankan asylum seekers that Britain has transferred to Rwanda say they've been left stranded. More on that story and other news at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is queuing towards Crown Interchange. The M1 northbound in Houghton Estate has a crash before 11th Avenue. The N12 eastbound in Germiston has a crash after Edenvale Road exit. Allendale Road eastbound in Klootkorp has delays towards Keenock Road. The N1 southbound in Midrand has a stationary vehicle just before Buccleuch Interchange. All lanes are open. The N1 southbound in Pretoria has a crash just before Regal Avenue exit. And on Saturday, the Bulls will host Benetton in a quarter-final clash at Loftus Versfeld with a kick-off at 3:30. So you are to expect delays on local routes. In KZN, the Comrades Marathon will be taking place on Sunday, so there are road closures between Durban and Pietermaritzburg from 4 a.m. until 6 p.m. for the uprun. Full details are available at www.comrades.com. The N2 northbound has a crash after the M41 gateway exit. The N3 eastbound in Pinetown is queuing towards Marion Hill Toll Plaza, and the N3 eastbound in Pietermaritzburg has a stationary truck reported just before Market Road exit. In Cape Town, the R45 Franschhoek Pass will be closed, so some advance warning for you, because from Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday next week for roadworks and repairs, the road will be closed from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. The M5 southbound has a crash near Milner Road. All lanes are open. The N1 inbound has a lost load reported at the N7 highway interchange. All lanes are open. And AZ Berman Drive in Mitchell's Plain has heavy traffic near Highlands Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, let me guess what the Minister of Sports is going to be talking about today. Bafana.
Of course. They're playing tonight.
Got it right.
We have to talk about Bafana. And just talking about Bafana, legend Lucas Radebe says that Coach Hugo Bruce has brought back the confidence in the national team. Bafana currently on the back foot, having won and lost their opening 2 matches in Group C, and must now pick up points to have a chance at reaching the World Cup. And with the team facing Nigeria tonight, Rue believes that they can do it alongside Bruce.
I mean, great that they did well. I think for me it was fantastic, and I think I've seen a lot of improvement with Bafana. I mean, for the way they they played or they performed at the AFCON, it was absolutely amazing, because I think it was not everybody thought they will reach that level, but I think I saw the level of commitment, which is one of the things that's been missing.
Meanwhile, Nigerian football fans are demanding and very hard to please. And according to striker Kelechi Iheanacho, he is quite optimistic and believes that they have a significant opportunity to secure a spot in the World Cup. However, he just says that he's asking the Nigerians just for some support.
I think in terms of the expectations, I think we've set the standard now. Obviously, this is what we want. Obviously, we say in the AFCON. So, not much people believe that we'll do that, but we've done it now. So, we just need to keep the standard, and all we need from Nigerians is just the support that they've been giving us, so that we'll keep the standard and keep raising the bar high.
Then in cricket, in the meantime, New Zealand captain Kane Williamson hailed the T20 World Cup's expansion to 20 nations after co-host United States beat Pakistan yesterday in one of the biggest upsets in the tournament's history. The World Cup, also co-hosted by West Indies, has an extra 4 teams, giving fledgling cricket nations more big tournament experience, while also raising concerns their presence could mean more than one-sided results. Now in action, Canada is taking on Ireland, and Ireland won the toss and they elected to bat first. Then also in action in tennis, Carlos Alcaraz and Yannick Sinner facing off taking on each other in a blockbuster French Open semi-final today. And in terms of the ongoing action, Alcaraz is currently leading by 2 sets. So quite an interesting matchup that we have here, and it'll be interesting to see who's going to go on to the final. This clash is the first men's singles semi-final at Roland Garros, contested between 2 players under the age of 23 since 2008, when Rafa Nadal beat Djokovic en route to his 4th title. And with that said, it is a wrap from my side, and I'll have more Monday.
Monday, okay. So 9 o'clock is the game. So what are the implications? I mean, do you know much in terms of where we are, points? Besides 3 points for the win. Yeah.
Yes, obviously we need 3 points, and as I did say earlier on, Bafana has lost 1, they have won 1, and now obviously we've been hearing Coach Bruce saying that they need to win today to keep the pressure off themselves so that they can go on and qualify for the World Cup. So hopefully they win today, then it will put them in a better position to qualify for the World Cup.
If you can't win, draw, but do not lose. I mean, that's the bottom line. All right, you want to give your usual sign-off? I mean, there are people waiting for it,
Alrighty.
There we are. More sports, well, on Monday.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The battle between the Super Eagles and Bafana Bafana is an ongoing grudge that will never end. They both believe their style of football is superior. The West clashes with Southern Africa. This is the FIFA World Cup African qualifiers. Catch Africa's great football rivalry. Nigeria versus South Africa. On Friday, 7 June at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, last day of the working week. Let's get to the MoneyWeb market update with Jimmy Moya. Hi, Jimmy.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you?
Yeah, good indeed. Pretty well. Well, it's the end of the week, so it's not that it's worse. I love working. Seriously. No TG. What's it? Thank God it's Friday. No, that doesn't work for me. But anyway, you can check.
That happens to be a very lovely restaurant in the US, and I say that because the US markets have been quite interesting today. A mixed reaction and a mixed set of data has come out of there that's actually sent the markets into a bit of a tailspin. We expected the jobs numbers, the private non-farm payrolls numbers, they came through at about 2:30 earlier today, and we expected around 170,000 jobs to be created, but in fact we got 229,000 jobs created, so quite surprised to the upside in that respect. We also saw that the average hourly earnings, which is a measure that the US Fed looks at to see the strength of the US labor market, increased to 4.1%, and this would ordinarily be seen as strength in the US economy and would drive markets to look at things a little differently on the interest rate side of it, especially where it relates to the US dollar. This was the one side of the conversation, and despite this, we saw an unemployment rate increase from 3.9% to 4%, which suggests that the labor market and the US economy is not as well as we thought it might be. Marginal increase in unemployment, but we did not expect that to come through. So the markets have been rather confused as a result of that, not knowing what to make of those data points. What we have seen, however, though, in the reactions from the markets is that the commodities prices, particularly the gold price, has come down quite significantly from around $2,380, almost $2,400 an ounce, to around $2,300 an ounce. It's about a 2.5 to 2.6% decrease on the day. We've also seen softer platinum prices down at around $970 and palladium around $911. Brent crude has moved up marginally. It briefly touched $80 a barrel. It's now at about $79.64 a barrel. So interesting reaction from the commodities front. But if we look at the reaction on the currency side of it, the rand actually marginally strengthening against that weakening US dollar at around 18 rand 88. Not much strength there from 18.92, but we'll take it nonetheless as we close out the Friday. The rand against the pound was at 24 rand and 2 cents, gaining about almost 0.75%, and the euro against the rand was at around 20 rand and 40 cents for 1 euro. That was about 1% stronger in favor of the rand on today's movements. The Australian dollar also gave back about 1.5% to the rand at about 12 rand and 43 cents for an Australian dollar. And if we look at the performance of the equity markets, we'll start with Asian markets. They were trading first throughout the day. Sydney was up about 0.5%. Shanghai, mainland Shanghai, was up about 0.1%. Hong Kong was down about 0.6%, with Tokyo, Nikkei remaining flat, fairly unchanged. The CAC 40 in France was down about 0.4%, with the DAX in Germany down 0.5%. The FTSE in London, that was down 0.33%, and we kind of expected that would mean that something would happen on the local front, and the weaker commodities prices had resource counters down 1.8% on the day, with industrials down 0.4%, while financials were the only saving grace for local South African markets. They were up 0.9%. This meant the all-share closed the week out and the day out rather at 0.35% in the red, with the top 40 down 0.5%. A quick look at US markets at this stage as they stand. NASDAQ is basically flat, down 0.1%. S&P 500 similarly up 0.04%, so less than 0.1% in the green, basically flat there. And the Dow is up about 0.1%. So markets still digesting what's been happening, looking at various things that could be driving the markets going into the new week. We know that from a South African perspective, obviously, the outcome of the elections and the outcome of that government of national unity that's been proposed remains at the forefront of investors' minds as to how they see the US markets and how they see things panning out. A couple of things that we want to be looking out for next week, or at least that I'll be keeping an eye on. We've got some European parliamentary elections on Sunday. We've got a banking holiday in China on Monday, along with Hong Kong. It is the Dragon Boat Festival. We've also got a holiday in Australia, so those markets won't be trading on Monday, but we do still have a couple of other data points to.
Thanks for that, Jimmy. Have a great weekend, and yeah, we certainly will talk on Monday. We'll talk now regarding some of the biggest issues of the day, and there was an EFF press conference earlier on. We were hoping to talk to Well, the EFF are not talking, and we're hoping to play a package about some of the great sound coming out of that. We just hopefully will try and get that as soon as possible. But you who have heard the press conference, you can certainly comment about it. Tell us what you think. What does it say about the direction that you think the EFF are going to coming out of that press conference with regards to this all-important government of national unity, or other things, not just the EFF, anything else related to some of the biggest issues that impacts the national pulse. Sipo in East London, hi.
How are you?
Yeah, good indeed. Good talking to you, Sipo. Go ahead.
Thanks, Ashraf. Look, firstly, let's start here. The government of national unity, there's no such at post the first phase of 1994 to 99. There's no legal framework to ensure that accountability will still be guaranteed. The government structures or architecture, so to speak, has now been established. We require a strong opposition to ensure that we keep both government and bureaucrats in government in check. And the risk that we run as South Africans is to close our eyes and pray that the DA and the ANC goes into what is called GNU or coalition.
Yeah.
We will be left exposed as South Africans with the amount of resources at the disposal of government. That's one worry that we are closing our eyes on as South Africans.
Okay, so how do we navigate that then?
No. It's very clear. The ANC is 40%. It has to go to a coalition, whether it's a broad coalition or coalition with three parties. It has to go there. Mm-hmm. But we've got to also to anchor the opposition as our legal system requires the opposition in parliament. And if we are going to allow that the backroom political negotiations will do us good more than the legal framework that will expose and put everything into public domain, we are not going to win as South Africans. It's unfortunate that the EFF is taking this stance. I'm hoping that they will really meet with the ANC, because they should not be pushed out of the room. They should get into that room, into a coalition, up to a point where DA will say, because they are pronounced, they can't be in government with MK and the EFF. So they will push themselves out. But now, if EFF pulls back, they are giving space to the DA.
Well, you're right. I think they're not going. It's going to make the DA a far more attractive proposition to be partners with, because the ANC would run out of options, isn't it? Yeah. So point valid. Yeah. All right, Sipo. Lots that you've said to think about, and appreciate your input. Yeah. Thank you for that. Right. Let's get to the Northern Cape now. And we have an anonymous caller from there. Hi, anonymous.
Good afternoon, Ashraf Garda.
Good afternoon, indeed. Go ahead.
Ashraf, the ANC have their own constitution. I don't know why they don't and go there and look up what is for guidance. Now, they must cancel all this talks and this negotiation if I was there, and remain the opposition, and rather call for an emergency special conference where all their structures are involved, because members of that conference, they are mandated. They have a mandate from their branches. And they can take the decision that will dictate the way forward. But my biggest problem is, Ashraf, I hope they will do that, but I don't think they will do that, because all of the senior leaders in the ANC are implicated in wrongdoing. Now, if I was the opposition, let me put it this way. The problem will start when they have to impeach Mr. Ramaphosa, if they're going to elect him for the presidency, because Pala is pending. Fasikile is implicated, Gwede is implicated. Oh, I can go all the way, Ashraf.
Okay, so not all many, right? As you know, right?
Many. So my option for the ANC is, please remain the opposition, consult your branches and this conference that I was talking about.
Okay, but here's two things. I mean, the conference that you're talking about can take months to put together. It doesn't take a week. It doesn't even take a day. And if they remain in opposition, it means the others must collectively find 60% and nobody, or 50%, and nobody's going to find 50 plus 1 without the ANC. They just won't.
Ashraf, the main reason for this, why I asked them to remain the opposition, so that they can see themselves, because 40% of the voters gave them a mandate. They represent 40% of the voters. Now, this 40%, and is their base, I believe is their base. They haven't consulted them, and that is a big problem for me. That is why, if they don't do that, Ashraf, they will go down within 2 years. We will lose another 20%.
Okay, but I still ask the question. I'll leave it, and you don't have the answer. If they stay in opposition, then somebody must get 50% plus 1 to govern. And I don't see the numbers. Who's going to do it? It would mean the DA talking to the EFF and the DA talking to the MK. It's the only way you can get 50%. The smaller parties outside of those three just don't add up to be able to knock the ANC out from leadership to opposition and let them stay there. It's not going to happen. Thanks for that, Anonymous, but conference is what he says. In fact, maybe we'll get more thoughts on this, but listen to this one. So we know the EFF had a conference today. Floyd Shivambu had lots to say in terms of what their views are regarding the proposed government of national unity. I'm going to play that right now.
And we think now that through fair observation and what got to happen with the Democratic Alliance and all these minority white parties, they represent that agenda. That is why the beneficiaries of the white capitalist and apartheid colonial establishment exclusively funded the Democratic Alliance and all these puppet parties. A lot of resources, hundreds of millions, were invested not just to fight the ruling party, the ANC, to fight against the economic freedom fighters. Where you had political organizations who dedicated their energy, their resources, human capital, and everything else that they dedicated was against the economic freedom fighters. We are not going to form part of any government with the Democratic Alliance. We're not going to sit alongside the Democratic Alliance and Freedom Front Plus in government as the economic freedom fighters. And we are not desperate for positions in government. We're not going to do everything in our power so that we're appointed into cabinet or we become speakers of parliament and all of those things. We're not going to sit alongside the land thieves. We're not going to sit alongside the people who got to benefit unlawfully for a very long time from colonialism and apartheid. We're not going to sit alongside them and constitute the government of South Africa. If the ANC wants to choose that route, they can go ahead and do what they did in 1994. And we know what are the consequences of what happened in 1994.
Okay, so that's the one thing. And then he also spoke about the government of national unity.
Let's deal with this issue of the government of national unity. We are opposed to the government of national unity in as far as it resembles what was concocted in 1994. So if you were to check the outcomes of that government of national unity of Nelson Mandela, it had F.W. de Klerk as an executive deputy president. It had Big Botha as a minister of mineral resources and energy. It had Andre van Niekerk as the minister of land and agriculture. It had some mayor from the National Party as Minister of the Environmental Affairs and Water Affairs. And even he had in social development a minister which came from the apartheid establishment. We do not want to form any part of a government with representatives of the white colonial and apartheid system.
Okay, there's a lot that Floyd Shivambu said. What do you make of it? Give me your thoughts. Let's get your comments as we get to wrap up the show at 6 o'clock, right after this.
Channel the best father you can be on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3. As psychologist Clint Maggot offers effective coping strategies for men's mental health. Get tips on saving and investing for your child's education. And hear how Dr. Anza Chipetane shapes bright young leaders. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
Bakaka are searching for their first victory to cement their plan of returning to the rooftop of Ibhola laseMzansi. Yet, the Natal Rich Boys believe that tears of joy belong to them. This is the Premier Soccer League promotional playoffs. Catch Baroka FC versus Richards Bay FC this Saturday, 8 June at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
All right, lots of comment about you know what, GNU.
Hi Ashraf, good show as usual. Ashraf, I wanted to make a comment regarding the Government of National Unity. I think people need to look at it in perspective. For instance, if there is no GNU possible and there is a rerun of elections, there is no guarantee that the voters will change who they voted for, so that we have a party that has got a 50+1 majority to form a government on its own. It might turn around that those voters who voted for the smaller parties may decide, no, we vote for the bigger parties so that they get 50+1. That means they lose out. So there is a risk. They might as well join the GNU.
Okay, got that. Well, you're right, because as is cleared up the other day in my conversation with, who did I speak to? Stephen Friedman. We don't have an election runoff like other countries whereby if you don't get the 50%, then they have a re-election, let's say a month later, but then only the top two compete and everybody else drops away. So then you and I would be asked to vote on 100% of just two parties. And you could have a very different situation. Sometimes you actually can get the second party that actually beats the first party in that election. Okay, let's get to Shaka in Bloemfontein. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah, good talking to you.
Yes, I'm responding to Floyd. You see, the problem with the Floyd statement is that the parties, EFF and ANC, didn't get enough votes so that they can exclude the colonial apartheid, parties and so on. So because they haven't got those majorities, their options are very limited.
I think you're right. That those options are limited for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, everybody's options are limited, except if the ANC goes with MK and the EFF.
Yeah.
And then MK is not so keen and so on. And MK is
exactly, which means the ANC himself had got option problems. So, the point we're making, both you and I together, in fact, is that there's a lot of bravado from all the political parties as if they've won the election. So they can tell everybody what to do. But the reality is all of them have less leverage than they had before.
And then therefore, I think all parties must eat a humble pie. I don't think parties can behave as if they command a majority. I get the impression that the parties, they talk as if they have large majorities. No one has got large majorities. Otherwise, there was no need for any coalition and so on.
Yeah, got that. All right, thanks for that call, Chaka. And I think Chaka is absolutely right. It's a sober call. It's the reality. Here's another voice note.
Thumbs up, Shivambo. Spot on. Thanks, Ashraf. Philip Macho. EFF on spot on here.
Okay. Philip says EFF spot on. Here's another comment.
Good evening, Ashraf. Nanlabana from Umzimkulu. I fully agree with the stance EFF is taking. I would like to see ANC, EFF, and IFP. They must sit on one table. Put their differences on the table, discuss them, and put aside, and agree on the principles how to take forward this country. Because the marriage of ANC and the DA is not going to work. Why? It's not going to benefit the poor of the poorest of this company. Of this nation.
Here's the thought. When the ANC running the country on its own, how did that benefit the poor as well? Just think about that. In charge for 30 years, how did the ANC-led government benefit the poor? Here's another one, Ashraf. One word in terms of the issues: stalemate. Cliffhanger. Well, you're right. Stalemate is certainly what it is, right? Okay, and there's another one, Brian from East London. The EFF statement is blatantly racist and anti-white and therefore does not deserve any further comment. I mean, that's what you say. Let's see if we've got time for maybe one more call. No, maybe not. Right, we've certainly had a cross-section of opinions here. It just gives me a chance to tell you, all right, years one, maybe we can just wrap up with this on the President's trip to the Eastern Cape.
Hi, I want to comment on the visit by the President to East London, Eastern Cape. I don't know why it's only visiting Eastern Cape when also KwaZulu-Natal was impacted by the tornado. To me, it looks like he's still bitter about KZN and MK taking a big chunk of it during the elections. Okay. But that's my view.
Interesting you say that. I'm just wondering, my question was like, where do they have the time in the midst of there's so many other things they need to be doing, and there is so much happening, right? But let's leave it at that. I suspect it's going to be a hectic weekend of news gathering all throughout Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday, and we'll do it all again here on the National Pulse Monday afternoon. Don't forget that, right? Thanks to the team that puts it all together, Mark Preller, Tumi, Teboho, DJ Keys, and then Vusani, as well as Temba Dlamini. All of them, including myself, make up what is called the National Pulse. Goodbye, good night, have a lekker weekend. But don't forget, it's news time now. Here's Greg Hose.
Thank you again, Ashraf. KZN police deployment welcomed, and the IFP weighs in on Government of National Unity. Good evening. Some political parties in KZN have welcomed the additional deployment of police officers in the province after last week's elections. As part of the election security plans, police have deployed an additional 300 members of the Public Order Policing Unit to KwaZulu-Natal. They say this is to maintain peace and stability post the elections. The DA's Francois Rogers.
The Democratic Alliance welcomes the announcement that there will be additional security